it's hard to believe in these days that, you know, we all grew up as kids shooting guns, you know, unsupervised, and, you know, we'd experiment with alcohol and tobacco, and, you know, there weren't school shootings, and we still have all of our limbs, and, you know, we learned how to ride a bike without a helmet, and, you know, we learned how to roller skate without wearing, you know, a full hockey goalie, you know, pad set up, and yet we survived.
Well, it's interesting enough, I think we talked about this before. My parents always said, if there's no lightning, go outside and play.
Yeah.
And so, and kids now, it's, oh, if it's raining, they're not going outside. So it's a lot different now with, you know, raising kids that it was when we grew up.
Well, I have the honor of sitting here with a couple fine gentlemen with a brand that we have very quickly come to love and jump behind. It's a special brand. It's a special story, and honestly, this time that we've spent here at this beautiful place in South Georgia, surrounded with, you know, your team and kind of extended family that, you know, have all invested their heart into what you've created in just a short time is nothing short of a blessing and quite frankly something very, very special. So welcome, guys. Norm Hooten, Tim Young, thanks for sitting down with us and inviting us here to this special place and sharing some time with us. I'm grateful.
Well, we're actually grateful that you're here.
Yes, well, thanks for traveling all the way from sunny California to rainy southern Georgia, but this is home, so welcome.
Well, I look for any excuse to get out of Southern California, but you know, we're gonna get into a lot of stuff. I mean, this is an amazing personal story, an amazing business story. It's certainly you know, the reason why we started this publication is I'm a huge fan, obviously, of America, but especially the American dream. And, you know, that's something that's unique and personal to everybody. But, you know, thank God we all have the freedom to pursue, you know, whatever our dream and passion is. And, you know, as we know, with hard work and perseverance, a lot of impossible things become possible in this country. And so we like telling those stories, and you know, none are closer to my heart than, you know, people who have served this country like yourself, which I'm grateful for, and your family as well, Tim, and then especially, you know, people that have the courage not only to start their own business, but especially people that are, you know, bullheaded, stubborn, and a little bit of a masochist enough to try to start a business in alcohol or tobacco or firearms, much less two of the three. You know, you're just gluttons for punishment, apparently.
Really? I think we've actually enjoyed doing
We're
this.
not into firearms yet, but maybe one of these days.
Yeah, you never
we
know,
thought
right?
about it actually, but
Yeah.
that was our first proposal, was going and making a gun together. Right?
Actually, that's right. Yeah. Somebody had came to me and said, "Hey, we'd like to do a Norm Hooten gun," and I said, "Okay." So I went to Norm and said, "Hey, you want to do a gun?" He goes, "No, not right now. I mean, I don't want to do this right now."
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting when you get to know Norm. He is, I mean, his past is the past, and his stories are awesome, but he's a wonderful human being, and it's been great.
Yeah, it's obvious from getting to know you guys that there's a special bond there, and you know, it's one of the things that I love about these three things: alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, is that you know, no matter the chaos that you're immersed in, you know, whether that's a forward position or it's at home around the fire or whatever it is, these things cause you to slow down, to think a little bit more, you know, to share thoughts and ideas that, you know, maybe you wouldn't during the normal chaos of life. And you know, it kind of brings out the best in us, and kind of takes us back maybe to a simpler time, you know, even when you're living in the midst of the chaos of things. So I know that you guys share that belief as well, and it's part of the heart of the brand itself is sharing that time with your brothers, and hopefully coming out better on the other side.
Exactly. It's funny that we talked about this earlier. Is about God has a plan. How do I meet a man like him? How do we do what we do? We still don't understand how we did this.
Started out as a gift.
That's right.
We enjoyed cigars and whiskey together, and we were sitting out there on I think it was my back porch one day, and we said, hey, I want to make cigars for my buddies at Bragg. And Tim, of course, you got to be careful what you say to Tim, because Tim takes it and runs with it. And he goes, hey, I got a friend of mine that's from Cuba, and he makes great cigars. And before we know it, we had 300 cigars that we basically self-banded. No intention of going into the business together. We were just going to make them as a gift. We wanted to share the experience with them remotely, and just contribute to that big day for those guys. And we came up with off the cuff slogan is, hey, this is made to remember you guys, which is now our company slogan. But we put that on our first band, never thinking that it was going to go on any further than that. Sent them up to Fort Bragg, and then we started getting orders for boxes of cigars. And then we got so many, ultimately we decided maybe we should start, we can only give away so many cigars. So we started selling them. And then but it started out as a camaraderie, sitting around what I call the modern day campfire, smoking cigars, drinking whiskey together, enjoying each other's company. And we wanted to share that outside our inner circle. And it really did start off as nothing more than, hey, we want to give to some very, very special people.
Well, yeah, it's kind of that heart of service that continues, even beyond the military or anything else, right? It's hopefully something that's just ingrained in us to, lend a helping hand, to give when we can, and, just believe that, those good deeds come back to you and all boats rise, right? So, we share that. Before we get started in the story, we always like to start with a few easy questions that almost everybody has, everybody remembers almost, and everybody usually has a pretty interesting, fun story behind it. So after I ask the first question, you guys will know where this is going. So I'll start with you, Norm. Do you remember your first experience with alcohol?
Absolutely. So my first experience with alcohol, my dad used to make moonshine in the barn. And so I used to watch him go through the process, and I remember him called me over and said, hey, take a little bit. I was about 7 years old. And he said, take a little bit of that. And I think he was doing it to basically break a habit of the curiosity.
Right.
And I took one sip of it, and it was like drinking fire, liquid fire. And I didn't touch it again until I was like 12, right?
Well,
and that's quite a lag. But that was my first experience with it. It was my dad making it in the barn, and him taking it right off the still and say, hey, come over and try it a little bit.
Oh my God.
And I remember thinking, how could anybody enjoy that at the time?
Right. What about you, Tim?
I think it was a lot later in life, like in high school. But we both understand that we both grew up in Texas, and we played football. So if you played football in Texas, you get ways that you drink it as a freshman or eighth and ninth grade when we started drinking a little bit. It wasn't until later in life that I actually started enjoying.
Tim's afraid he's going to get in trouble now.
Hopefully my wife doesn't watch this. Our deal is that everybody's experiment at that age, right? Drinking beer and whatever. But drinking whiskey, that didn't start until I think I met Norm.
Okay.
I think, Norm, you turned me on to the whiskey side.
I don't know about that. I think you had a pretty good collection of whiskey when I met you. I think
that's true too, but I'm a collector.
But we drink a lot more whiskey together.
If you drink alone, you got a problem. If you drink together, you're just being social.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
All right. So then, obviously, with the next question, what do you remember your first experience with tobacco?
I do. Of course, again, in childhood, my family had every vice you could have. But everybody in my family smoked, and they were Camel, no filter, 3-pack a day
Right.
smokers if they weren't rolling their own with Bull Durham, right? And,
Right.
And I remember I was in one of those little plastic swimming pools that you buy from like, Kmart or something, and I had a jump rope that was hollow, and I used to watch my grandparents smoke, and I would go under the water and I'd breathe, and my grandfather came over and blew smoke into the into the makeshift snorkel, and again another harsh experience, but that was it. And I never smoked cigarettes or anything like that when I was a kid. Chewed tobacco.
Yeah.
Right. So I used Red Man, Levi Garrett, and of course in the military, I did 22 years in the Army. That's pretty much a staple. People will carry, if they have to carry chow or tobacco, they're going to leave the chow and they're going to take the either the snuff or the leaf tobacco with them.
Did you also ever carry either the checkout or celebration cigar in your kit?
We did. Yeah. We'd always carry a cigar and enjoy one after special events or after a mission or after somebody passed on or a promotion, any kind of celebratory event. It was very common.
What about you, Tim?
Well, I can tell you this. I was in fraternity. I smoked one cigar. I didn't know you couldn't hit in hell. That was the last cigar I smoked until I met Norm.
Gotcha.
Norm put me on to whiskey and cigars, really. You got me hooked up,
He's
man.
a great influence.
Oh, he's a great influence.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this, is that I love cigars.
Yeah.
Just love them.
Agreed. All right, so you know what the last question is. Do you remember your first firearms experience?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, little kid. Started with firearms unsupervised with a 22, Model 64 Winchester 22 pump with shorts on a ranch in West Texas. After my dad gave me a few classes on what not to do, he would turn me loose and go have fun. I'd go shoot cans and rocks and just have fun with it, but unsupervised at about 7 years of age on a ranch.
Yeah, unfortunately.
We used to take firearms to show and tell in Texas. I'd say, hey, look, this is what I got for Christmas.
Well, yeah, I mean, it used to be right the normal high school parking lot, especially during hunting season.
In the gun racks.
Back window of the gun racks, like you just...
But that was I started with firearms very, very early in life.
Yeah.
And I think most people in that area did.
It's just a way of life.
It was a way of life.
Yeah, 100%. What about you, Tim?
Well, I got to tell you, my first gun I ever owned was a Remington 870 pump. And I got it when I was 16. My parents couldn't afford anything except for a shotgun. And so I said, oh, that's great, thank you very much. And then my dad said to me, you're not going to use it till we learn how to clean it. So about 3 months later, I was able to shoot it and so forth. But ironically enough, I think every one of my teammates in Corpus had a shotgun somewhere. And we would go after school and we'd go shoot. So everybody had their shotguns in the back. And I said, this is an awesome life. We love shooting. It's great.
Still enjoy it.
Yep.
Yeah, I always start with those questions, and it's funny, like no matter what the walk of life or experiences or anything else, everybody smiles when I ask those questions, and everybody remembers the story, right? And in most cases, almost all cases, it started in the younger years. We all experimented with something, right? And because there's just something special about these things, right? They're kind of symbols of manhood. They're symbols of America.
Rites of passage.
Rites of passage. Yeah. Every young boy used to want to, grow up and, be his dad or some better version of his dad, hopefully. But, I just remember, always being young and always thinking, these are the things that are symbols of manhood, right?
And our heroes,
you'd see those guys sitting around and drinking and smoking or shooting or whatever, and it's like, wow, like I want to be
your favorite TV series, Gunsmoke and Rawhide.
I love that, right? Because it, it just represents how important these things are to, America's foundation, and I think they're just synonymous and ingrained in the American spirit. And as you said, Norm, it's true. I mean, it's hard to believe in these days that we all grew up as kids shooting guns, unsupervised, and we'd experiment with alcohol and tobacco, and there weren't school shootings, and we still have all of our limbs. And, we learned how to ride a bike without a helmet. And, we learned how to roller skate without wearing, a full hockey goalie, pad set up, and yet we survived.
Well, it's interesting enough, I think we talked about this before. my parents always said, if there's no lightning, go outside and play.
Yeah.
And so, and kids now, if it's raining, they're not going outside. So it's a lot different now with, raising kids that it was when we grew up.
Well, and as a result, I think those adults turn out a little bit different as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about, because just like you guys, right? I mean, my mom literally, after breakfast would kick me out the door. You learned a lot of lessons of cause and effect at that age, out there exploring and getting into stuff, and getting smacked around by somebody maybe got a little bit too bold with, but you learned the lessons of youth.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's quickly kind of go through the beginning. So tell us, Norm, where'd you grow up? How'd you grow up?
So I grew up, born and raised in Texas. My family's been in Texas since the 1840s. Central Texas for the most part. So Lomita, San Saba area, right in the middle of Texas. And then moved to Brackettville, Texas when I was about 6 years old. Spent my entire childhood in Brackettville, Texas, which is near the city of Del Rio, near the Rio Grande River. And loved it out there, very rural. I think we had 800 people in that town then. I don't know how big it is now, but it was about 800 folks. And I think they all owned firearms, and they all, got along, no issues out there. But my mom was a Baptist preacher's daughter, and my dad was a hooligan. But the preacher's daughters generally tend to go for the bad boys sometimes. But I spent my whole life in Texas. First time I left the state of Texas was when I joined the Army. When I became an adult at 18, 19 years old, joined the Army and left the state of Texas and never went back. Stayed in the Army 22 years. Most of that was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Yeah.
But rural ranching community, firearms were a big part of it.
Yeah.
And personal freedom was obviously a big part of it. So it's still a frontier atmosphere. So
looking back, you have a good childhood?
I did. I had an awesome childhood. I was a free range kid.
Yeah.
I was free to go get in as much trouble as I wanted to get into, but always had to bear the consequences of that on my own. And like you said, they were lessons learned. So sometimes you went out and that was fun. Sometimes you came back and went, I'm not going to do that again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But learned I think the most important lesson that any young man can learn, which was accountability for your own actions.
Right.
And learning to make it on your own. You had to be independent. We didn't hang around in the house till we were 40. Right. At 18 years old, you were making a choice. You were going to go to work. You were going to go to college. You were going to go to the Army. And I never knew anybody that went to college. And I knew I didn't want to work in the oil fields, And so the Army was that choice. But personal accountability was something that I think maybe it was a generational thing. And I think there's still guys today that are. But it was just the normal way of things back then.
Yeah. Patriotic.
Very
hard
patriotic.
Work.
Yeah. When we took the Pledge of Allegiance in the morning in school, we truly felt like we were pledging allegiance to each other, not just a flag.
Yeah. And there was a common bond there.
We felt like, hey,
regardless of what anybody did or believed, they all loved the flag.
These are the guys we're going to go to war with if we have to.
Yeah.
And that's the way we were taught, and that's the way we looked at it. So it meant something to us in the morning when we got up and said that.
Yeah. Yeah. And how'd you grow up, Tim?
Well, I grew up a little differently than Norm did. First of all, my dad was in the military for 34 years, and he worked for the government afterwards. So he was very much a military Southern Baptist, if you get my drift. Don't smoke, drink, or dance.
Right.
Ironically enough is that my dad in my junior year in high school said to me, he said, and I grew up in Corpus Christi area primarily, and he said, hey, you can join the Army or you can go to college. I said, B.
Right.
I said, I've been in the military, just I didn't wear a uniform.
Yeah.
I've been to every post. I've been everywhere. I've been every commissary. I've worked at the commissary. I've done all that stuff. I want to go to college.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't realize when you get to college, there's a free reign of drinking and smoking and having a good time. Well, it only lasted about 2.5 years at Texas A&M, and then I ended up at Baylor. And I got to tell you this, the best thing that ever happened to me. I tell everybody all the time, I said, man, the best school in the world is Baylor. Because guess what? It got me on the right direction, small classrooms. And then I actually got a job. And but I primarily lived in Texas. When you live in Texas, there's no other state.
Yeah.
You don't
They
leave
think
Texas.
they're on their country, yeah.
Well, absolutely.
They've wanted to beat their own country for like since the beginning of time.
I think today they like to be their own
Yeah,
country.
absolutely.
But, so I met my future wife at Baylor, and she said, hey, if you're going to marry me, you have to go to Boston. I said, where's Boston? She said, do you know where Boston? I said, no, I've never been there before.
Yeah.
And so I flew up with her, met her mom, and I can tell you this, I went, well, this is pretty cool, but I don't want to live here.
Right.
Well, I lived there for 5 years. I ended up working for a firm in Boston. And I got to tell you this, I was so glad to get out of Boston and move to Florida. We love Florida. We love Georgia. We like the South.
Yeah.
And
Well, you like freedom.
we do.
Yeah.
And you can speak whatever you want to say, so forth. But we all have a ingrained integrity level that we want to say that here's where we are. We kind of tell everybody everything. We don't have anything to hide.
Right.
You know, we're good conservative guys, and we do our thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so Norm, you came out of high school and very quickly thereafter joined the military.
Yeah, worked in a lumber yard for a while in Houston, and had always thought about going in the military. You know, when I was a kid growing up in that little town in West Texas, one of the things I remember the most was going in to get my hair cut once a week at the local barbershop, and that was kind of like where guys would gather and kind of talk to each other and meet. And you'd have these old guys coming in that spanned, I think we had a World War I vet there, so you're talking about the 60s, right?
Yeah.
So we had a World War I vets in there, a lot of World War II vets, and those guys seemed like they were really, really old then, but in the 60s they would have been in their 40s.
Right.
And they seemed to me like they were just ancient guys. And here I am at 62, now I realize just how young they were.
Right.
And the experiences they'd had in such a short period of time.
Right.
And then, of course, Vietnam was ongoing.
Right.
But so we had vets that spanned every war,
generation,
right?
yeah.
So in that little tiny town, you know, like I said, most people didn't have the means or the background to go off to university, so they went off to serve, but that was very influential on me. I listened to those guys, and they were my heroes, and so, you know, where other kids may have grown up in an atmosphere surrounded by academia.
Yeah.
My school was listening to vets.
Life, yeah.
And so I always had this interest in it, you know, that was from a young age. And of course, coming out of high school, didn't know exactly what I was going to do, and had a couple things that I was leaning that way anyway, but a couple things that triggered me to go into the military. One of them was, it was right after the failed Iran rescue mission, and I felt this patriotic.
It upset you.
Yes, it upset me, and I felt this responsibility that, hey, I need to do something. I don't know what it is, but I need to do something. The other one was, my dad had, you know, again had made whiskey, and I had reconnected with him after, you know, not seeing him for a while, and would go down to visit him in that little border town, and I would carry moonshine up to Houston to give to his buddies, right? And then, but at the time, you're not really realizing that, you know, that you're doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
But I got stopped in a traffic stop one day, and the consequence of that kind of helped me make my mind up a little bit to move towards a.
But even that, what, you know, what isn't, you know, you told me that story last night, you know, which, you know, I can just, you know, your storytelling is fantastic, because, you know, I can just put myself in your shoes, you know, and I can feel almost as if I was there, that, you know, here you are reconnecting with your dad, and I can imagine your dad, you know, you're excited to, you know, have this, you know, this channel of communication, and, you know, this bond, and, you know, Pop's going, hey, you know, can you, since you're leaving, you know, can you just load up your truck and take this to a buddy of mine? Yeah, sure, Pops, yeah, whatever you need, yeah, you know, not thinking anything. But then, you know, the other different thing about that time is, you know, and we all remember stories of this, and it's much different now, unfortunately, I think, but, you know, if you got stopped with a truck bed full of moonshine now.
Oh yeah, you'd be the end of your life, right?
End of your life. I mean, you've immediately got a record. You're immediately locked up. Your options in life are immediately changed forever. Mm-hmm. You know, but, you know, I'm sure, like, you know, a lot of us, you know, you had a cop that kind of just goes, look, you stupid kid, like, I'm gonna let you make a choice. You know, we can either go down this road, or you can go down this road, like, you know, but you know, you got to make a decision. So you obviously made the right decision. You didn't go to jail.
Yep. Not for long.
And you decided to enlist. So do you remember the day that you made the decision to go into the recruiting office?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was on a corner, Popolo Village in Houston, Texas, and right after the Iran mission, and right after getting back from Orange, Texas, and walked in and said, "Hey, what do you guys got?" Right, and I walked into the Army recruiter, joined, and was on the delayed entry program. So that I joined in.
So was it always Army for you, or
no?
or
actually, no.
Were you kind of surveying your options?
My first choice was the Marine Corps, and
actually.
Because most of the guys I knew.
So you took the ASVAB. You did well. You obviously had choices.
Yep.
So you were a decently smart kid.
Yeah, well, I had some common sense.
Yeah.
Although there are people that might beg to differ on that one, but a lot of my heroes growing up were in the Marine Corps, and I always had a.
Well, and those stories too in the barbershop. I mean,
yeah,
from
no,
World
those
War
got
I,
a lot
World
of
War II,
Marines,
Vietnam. I mean, the Marine stories were always.
They went through some rough stuff in the Pacific, but and I just thought they were like the toughest guys I'd ever met.
Heck yeah.
And so I joined the Marine Corps, and then as I got down to take the oath, I met a guy at the recruiting station that was in the special forces.
So you signed with the Marine
Corps, and we were walking in to swear the oath, and I started talking to this Green Beret recruiter, who was he was on temporary duty at the recruiting station as a medic. So I don't know what he was doing there, but he was down there on TDY, and so the more I learned about the Army and all the things you could get from the Army, like airborne school. It wasn't money. It was like, I want to do fun stuff. I want hey, you can go to airborne school. You can go shoot a lot of guns, all the stuff that I wanted to do. And the Marine Corps has always taken this approach to recruiting. It's like, hey, every Marine is the same, and there's no, we're not going to offer you anything up front other than anything else. But so as a young kid, I went, man, I could be jumping out of planes in like a couple of months. Yep. So that appealed to me because it was the adventurous part of it that I thought I could.
So you changed directions.
Changed and went to the Army.
Did you go straight to base, or did you jump on a bus?
We jumped on a bus. Well, I was on the delayed entry program for about 6 months. Jumped on a bus in January of 1981 and drove to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and started on the commo track. I was on what they called the SF Baby program.
You remember the bus ride?
I absolutely do. It was cold as hell. I remember going from Houston, Texas, getting off in Lawton, Oklahoma, and I remember how cold it was.
When the bus came to your house, pick you up, what did your mom do?
Yeah, so they sent a van to pick us up and take us down to the AFES station for processing.
Right.
And of course, my mom it was bittersweet to her. She was like, hey, you're going to get away from trouble, because she could see the relationship with my dad turning into something that might lead me into bad stuff. Yeah. And but at the same time, I was her firstborn son, and so it was 4 o'clock in the morning. I got up, got my stuff together, walked in. She was up, made me some breakfast, and I gave her a hug bye, and I said, I'll see you later. Walked down the sidewalk, got in the van, and she knocked on the window. I got out, and I hugged her again, and then the van started driving, and it stopped, and the guy goes, hey, Hooten, it's your mom. And she was behind the bus, and she'd run. So I got out. I said, Mom, I'll be okay. She went back in the house, got in the van, and left. But I remember she did not. That was the hardest goodbye I think I ever had, because my mom was a really special person. Yeah. Like all moms. Yeah. And I'll never forget it.
So then the van takes you to processing. You jump on a bus with a bunch of other wild-eyed kids, not knowing what the hell you actually signed up for. Yep. And was that a quiet bus ride?
Yeah, long, quiet bus ride, all-nighter, right?
Yeah. And everybody kind of looking at each other.
Yeah, sizing each other up. And, and we got off, and then all hell broke loose
Yeah, then went through boot camp.
Went through boot camp.
How was that?
It was having every second of your day accounted for was the hard part. That was the adjustment. Yeah. But the physical part of it, and the stuff like the orders and the shooting and the range and the training was fun. I thought that was fun stuff. But the regimentation of your lifestyle was the hardest part to adjust.
So when you got out of boot camp, where'd you go directly into?
I was on an SF contract, so they had the SF Baby program back then, which was basically you could come straight off the block and go into this, go to basic AIT airborne school, and
straight out,
and then straight into the Q course, and that's what I did. And that's the first time I'd ever been on an airplane. As we flew from Oklahoma City, so we got a bus from Lawton, went to Oklahoma City, flew to Atlanta, and took a bus to airborne school, which is in Columbus, Georgia, at Fort Benning, and jumping out of airplanes, just like the guy told me I would.
Just like that.
Yeah, and then
so you remember your first jump?
Oh yeah. I had a entanglement. So I went
on
out,
your first jump.
You gotta be kidding. Came under the aircraft, entangled with another jumper, and I was like, it happened so fast, I didn't really know what was going on. I just kind of wondered, hey.
So what was it like? 30 going out at a time? All static line stuff, right?
All static line, and they were putting out both sides of and we were on a C-130.
Yeah.
And we were going out.
Both sides. Off the line. So it was more than 30 going out.
And we came underneath the aircraft.
Yep.
And hit and wrapped around each other.
And all you'd had is classroom at that point.
Yeah, classroom and some what they call sustainment ground training, where you learn how to fall and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
so you remember that moment when you got tangled up?
Yeah, I remember when we landed together. We were like,
oh, you stayed tangled?
Yeah, we were two kids. We didn't even know. We were like,
what to do?
Yeah, it was the first jump. Maybe this is supposed to be this way.
So you just held your breath and hoped for the best.
Landed and really never knew anything was wrong. It happened so quick. I was like, what's going on? And I remember as we were coming down, there was a guy with a bullhorn standing under us, telling us basically trying to talk us through getting untangled.
And did you? No, you stayed tangled all the way to the ground.
Looked at each other and wrote it in. And
that could have been the end of your career right there.
Yeah, but thankfully everything
worked out. Yeah,
not a scratch.
Yeah,
got up, did 4 or 5 more of those, and then I got on another bus, went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and got right off that bus onto another one. I was in Camp McCall in the Q course, and I'll never forget the first Special Forces soldier I remember meeting was Major Bob Howard. He was a legendary Medal of Honor winner from the Vietnam era, MACSA guy, and he looked like everything you would imagine a Special Forces soldier looking like. And still to this day, he kind of set the standard for others to follow.
And what were you feeling on that day? Because you've been through boot camp. That was relatively easy. You got thrown out of a plane and survived. And
everybody was telling me basically it was going to be hard. Jump school was going to be hard. And I got to the Q course, and that's when I really
So the first day, so you get off the plane, you show up, you're face to face with him, and this guy clearly looks and feels different from any of the other soldiers you've been around.
As soon as I got off the bus, it hit the fan, and that was when you were really. That's when I realized, hey, everything you've done up to this point. It was easy, but I thought, hey, well, maybe everything's like this. When I got off at Camp McCall, I knew I was like, this is going to be a ball buster. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it didn't stop for 8 weeks.
And roughly, just for those that aren't in the know, what was that like? So at that point, you're still 19.
Yep.
And what's that 8 weeks look like?
It was very, very physical. So we did PT twice a day, a ruck in the morning, a run at night, or vice versa, and then everything in between. So you'd have events in between those events. Those were the scheduled, organized physical fitness training. But you were patrolling, you were land navigating, you were learning all the things that were common skills of a Special Forces soldier back then, and all of it was based around what had happened in Vietnam. Because 1981, I think the war ended in '75. Yep. Was the last official. Yeah. It was kind of winding down before that, but I think officially the end of the war was '75, mm-hmm. And so all of our doctrine and training was based on Vietnam.
What you learned there.
So there was a lot of field craft involved in it. So we spent a lot of time in the woods on patrolling and tactics and techniques, procedures. Navigation was a big one. In fact, that was a big weed out part of it. Yeah. Yep. And I think it still is. I think navigation is still used in a lot of those courses to kind of weed out a lot of the candidates. And it was no joke. And I'd done a lot of walking around in the desert when I was a kid, but I never seen a compass or a map or any of that stuff. So I had to learn that on the fly.
Well, and also, I mean, your landscape and environment was, pretty easy because, there's not a lot of obstruction in South Texas, but you get thrown in a woodsy area.
Distant terrain features in the desert. Like, I know that mountaintop.
I know where I'm at.
I know where that mountaintop.
But
I know that water tower.
Thrown in the woods in Georgia.
Yeah.
And things change.
Swamp and being unfamiliar with that but I just did everything they told me to do.
Yeah.
Right. I was like,
You took it seriously. You followed directions.
Like, whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to do it because I don't want to fail this. Right. And I was to the letter.
Yeah. And how many guys went in and how many guys got out?
I want to say we started that course with around between 180 and 200 people. And by the time the whole process was done of phase 1, which was 8 weeks, phase 2, phase 3, I want to say we finished with 30.
Yeah.
30 guys. But I can't say for sure, but my recollection is around 30 people. We had a high attrition rate, I think, because a lot of that class were guys like me, young kids that had never had any exposure to that stuff before.
Right.
And I don't know how much they altered the course, but it seems like the course was designed for an NCO that had at least a basic understanding of what was going on. But I will say that the kids that did finish that course turned out to be some pretty good dudes because they had to be able to pick that stuff up quickly.
Well, I'll say this, and I don't know that you agree, and this is this is more of an outsider's view, so it isn't educated firsthand, but it also feels like the military and the training process, and even boot camp, but certainly specialized training. Their human resources hadn't really gotten involved in the military yet. Mm-hmm. There wasn't, the policy was train these men to survive war, mm-hmm. right? Equip them, turn them into men, turn them into soldiers. It wasn't an easy time. It was psychological training as much as physical training, and it wasn't easy. And I'm not saying it's easy now, but it feels like it's different now.
It's different. It is different. There was no...
I don't want to discount anything anybody goes through now, but...
No, and these young guys today are just as heroic.
You listen to those stories of, even, Marine Corps boot camp, and like even today at this age, I think, Jesus, like that's scary. Mm-hmm. Much less as an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
That's
no, they could still,
you did what to who? What? Like,
when I went in the Army, man, they could still snatch you up and beat the hell out of you.
Right.
So if you wanted to talk back to your drill sergeant or something like that, they could get physical with you. It wasn't like they wrote you up on paper. Actually, I like it better because the paper stays around forever. You take an ass kicking, and it's over.
Right.
But today, because I think they're limited in that, now they have to put formal paper on you and stuff like that, which stays around forever. And some guys, I think that if they had a chance
to learn the hard way,
could become amazing
contributors.
I'm a big
fan of the hard way.
Me too.
I don't think I can't think of a single thing in my life that I remember as good.
Yeah.
That came the easy way.
It's real lessons. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the harder it is, the more I value it.
Mm-hmm. I prefer the hard way over the paperwork and it's because you can't recover from that kind of stuff. But,
I'm not a fan of
somebody slaps you around a little bit and kicks your butt or takes you out and makes you walk 40 miles with a rucksack or something. Hey, it may be brutal, but it's over with.
And it's a lesson.
And it's a lesson.
You learned.
Right.
Or you didn't.
Right.
All right. So you got through all 3 stages, and at that point, you're what?
So at that point, I would have been 20. By the time the course was over, 21.
Yeah.
21, about 18 months 18 months long.
Yeah.
By the time we went through the first phase, second phase, the third phase, and gaps in between, waiting to go to those courses, was assigned right off the bat to 5th Group. And
what'd you feel about that? Like, on the day you got through it,
pumped
because they're like, here's your papers, your 5th Group.
Super pumped. It was at that point in my life, I felt like the greatest accomplishment that the greatest achievement of my young life, and it was just such an honor to be on one day on one side looking at these these amazing heroes that were the Green Berets of the day, and then the next day
Now
you're
you're
standing
part of
there,
the tribe.
part of it, and it was just an amazing experience for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And going to 5th Group on Fort Bragg was my first assignment.
Right.
And I was a commo guy, and a lot of the, you know, it was kind of a luck of the draw. A lot of the times as a commo guy, you would end up in a commo company, you know, down there listening to code for a year or two before you actually got to go to an A team. And I was lucky enough to get picked to go to an A team early, and I went right straight to an A team. And then shortly after that, went to the Defense Language Institute, came back to 5th Group, and loved it. That was a great experience with some amazing heroes of their time.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
so that, you know, that also was an interesting time, right? Because you also, you know, another thing that's changed, I think, I don't know this for a fact, but it just felt like there were a higher percentage of career guys. And so, you know, your opportunity as a young soldier to come in and be surrounded by experience.
Yeah.
You know, and this isn't book experience or training experience. This is on the ground, you know, real forward position.
Yeah, no, guys sitting around in a team room showing each other their scars from you know, gunshot wounds that they got when they were in combat in Vietnam. And I was one of the younger guys, and obviously, you know, there were a few of us, but most of us in that company, most people in that company had been to Vietnam, and there were only a couple of us that had not been.
Right.
And so you felt very intimidated as a young guy, and these guys were truly, truly bad dudes. I mean, they were the real deal guys, and kind of a different mindset. Even I think later on in life, obviously got to serve with some really, really wonderful soldiers, but these were different soldiers.
They're hardened.
They were hardened, and they were hunters. So if you think about the way Vietnam was, these guys, they didn't get flying on a helicopter and get off and do a raid, you know, and come back an hour later. These guys went in for 30 days at a time.
Yeah, it wasn't precise.
And they hunted in the jungle while they were being hunted.
Correct.
So it's a different mindset.
100%.
And but they were just amazing. Still to this day, it gives me goosebumps thinking about the greatness that I walked around. At the time, I knew they were great, but even now I look back and I go, they were even greater than you thought they were.
Yeah.
And so I was very lucky.
So you're assigned to an A team. You're 21. You're eager. You're excited. You're surrounded by all these guys with all these amazing stories. And so far you've been trained, but you haven't seen anything. So what happens next in that chapter?
Yeah, well, I spent about 5.5 years in 5th Group, and it was a great bunch of guys. There wasn't any low intensity stuff going on to speak of at the time that we were going to get involved in. And I was on something called a SATM team, which is a Special Atomic Demolitions and Munitions team. Yep. A lot of people don't think those things existed because they wouldn't think that anybody would be crazy enough to carry a nuclear weapon around in a rucksack. But basically, we were a green light team that our mission. You're
here to dispel the myth.
Yeah,
it was a real thing.
It was a real thing. And
so what was in your rucksack?
So I got, as the young guy, I got to carry the nuke quite a bit. And
you carried the nuke.
The nuke, yeah.
In a rucksack.
In a rucksack.
It weighed how much?
83 pounds, something like that.
And you're carrying it around.
Carrying it around with your gear.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you'd have a parachute on top of that when you're jumping out with it.
Yeah.
But
you jump out of a plane with a nuke.
With
on
the
your
nuke.
back.
Yeah, and then carry it in and place it, or train to do it. We never actually, obviously.
Yeah, we should just pause for effect there, right? Because you know, as the world has now, you know, scared of, you know, nuclear power plants. Mm-hmm. You know, you were jumping out of a plane at 21.
Yep.
With a nuke. In a backpack.
Yep. Yep. And you know,
like I just really want that to set in. Like I don't want that to pass. Yeah. I went to it. Yeah, I had a great bus ride. Yeah, I carried a nuke in a pack. You know, I mean, you do a great job of just kind of.
But you understand, once you plant the bomb, now you got to leave.
Yeah.
So you kind of know that your ass is goodbye.
Well, you don't plan on it. You think you're going to be able to pull it off. But you know,
but also this is, you know, during an era. Well, I mean, it's past the era. They'd already done all the drills and experiments and bullshit out in the desert and everything. I mean, they knew what the range was, but you know, I don't know how much they disclose just how far and how fast you got to run before that timer goes down.
Yeah, and you could set the thing to go off with different yields. So it was like a 0.2 kilotons or 1 kiloton. You know, depending on how how you
1 kiloton
yeah.
on your back,
Yeah.
jumping out of a plane.
Yeah, but you know that's why you pick you when you're 21, because you're just like, hey, you want to carry around? Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you tell me I can.
Yeah.
Cool.
If they ask the 50-year-old self of you, hey, you want to put this in your back? What do you out of your mind?
Yeah. They could have told us back then, and of course not just me, all of us.
Yeah.
20, 21-year-old kids. They could have said, we want you to put this between your legs, swim this thing to Europe, across the Atlantic Ocean. We'll see when you get there. Go,
Roger that.
Where do you want me? Spain or Portugal or where do you want me to meet you at? And you'd have done it because you just believed in them. I think.
Well, that was the soldier mentality too.
Yeah, and I believed in my leaders.
Absolutely, 100%.
I did, and I had faith in them.
All right. So then what happens next?
I've spent about like 5.5 years in 5th Group, and then got to the point where, I thought, well, I really want to get involved in the direct action stuff. And Delta Force at the time seemed like the guys that were doing most of that, and they were very, very secretive back then, as they are today.
But that was mostly small unit direct action stuff.
Yeah. And nobody knew anything about them, but there were rumors. Right. And the rumor was probably more powerful than the truth, because I was like, hey, I'm curious as to what's going on. So I tried out for it and made it. Went over there in 1986, 87.
Which was an interesting time.
Yep. And was lucky enough to make it through the selection and training process and ended up in C Squadron. And
how was that process of getting through?
It was a different process. It wasn't, like I said, I think the hardest thing I ever did in the Army, as far as like you get performance on demand, would have probably been scuba school. Yeah. But it was selection was one where you were out on your own.
But you'd been in for some years.
Yeah. I'd been
you're clearly a qualified soldier. Had
been trained by the best guys of their generation.
Yeah.
So I was well prepared to go over there and at least give it a shot. And but you were in that particular course.
So you got through on the
got
first
to
time.
it,
Yeah.
got to it, and it was all you're alone. So you're making decisions by yourself, which was unique. I'd never done it. And when I was in the Q course, you were operating as a team.
Unit, yep.
Scuba school, you've got people beside you. You're in the class together. Everything else I'd ever done, you're in a group. This one, they get you up in the morning and they send you off. You by yourself, and you're completely alone. Except with a few exceptions where they bring you guys together for refit, but you're out there making decisions in the absence of anybody else. So you're not looking around to see what other people are doing. You're making the call.
And that's incredibly powerful. And to your knowledge, do they still do it that way?
Yes, I'm pretty sure they do.
Yeah, and that's very unique within the military. There isn't a lot of specialized training that's solo.
Alone. You're out there, they tell you where they want you to be and tell you to move out, and then it's up to you. You can sit down, take a break. You can go this way, you can go that way. You can pick. There's no training wheels. Yeah. Just take off, and then there it is. And 30 days later, approximately,
it's just your own personal test.
Yeah. And very lucky. It was a great call for me at the time, because as a young guy, still young, relatively young, NCO, I got to go in there and learn another side of the Special Forces trade, which was direct action operations with some of the best guys of their generation, and my colleagues, the guys that had gone through the selection courses at about the same time I did, were the same kind of people. So it was an awesome experience.
Yeah.
To do it.
Truly tip the spear. Top.
And they didn't have a manual.
Right.
They were writing the manual. So they were the ones that were developing the tactics, techniques, and procedures that have evolved, I'm sure, but the foundation was done in that of the modern special operations soldier was done in that building. And it was like, okay, how much explosives do we use? Well, I don't know. Let's just start figuring it out. Yeah. Right? How do we want to engage a room? Well, I don't know. Let's just figure it out. We'll go in. We'll look at the clock. We'll look at the.
There wasn't a lot of playbook at that time.
No, they wrote it, and being part of that early on was was just awesome. I mean, it was.
Do you think that helped develop kind of that that problem-solving, improvising mindset that you know obviously served you very well?
No, it absolutely did. It honed those skills. It was.
There's a lot of legendary phrases and statements about the only one is a bad one that comes to mind. Mike Tyson. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
But
right.
It's a great one, right?
Yeah.
Because no matter how clean the op strategy is,
yep.
within 30 seconds of being on the ground, things start changing.
Yep. And you didn't have the constraints that were put upon you in the regular Army. So it was like, you go ahead and do it. But if you get yourself killed, that's up to you, dude. I mean, it was
yeah.
Hey, we'd like to do this. Well, give it a shot. But if you lose a leg, hey man,
you might need it.
Up to you.
So don't.
Right.
Yeah.
So it made you really think about what you were doing. It was like, I can do anything I want to do, but make sure that what I want to do is the right thing.
Deliberate. Right.
Yeah. So you really had to think about what you were doing and go, okay, and how am I going to do this? And are there other ways? So you thought about it from every angle.
What was your first kind of deployment, your first piece of action?
So I'd been there when I first reported to C Squadron was gone to the Atlanta prison. And, when the Marielitos, the Cuban prison riots in Atlanta in the late 80s. And so linked up with them as it was finishing up down there. But that was the first thing I remember seeing was C Squadron rolling out to
which is one of the most unique situations in special forces. So I mean, the fact that you had to handle a domestic situation.
Yeah, no, I was beyond my imagination when I saw it. What are we doing? But and then after that one, after I'd been in the squadron about a year, I went to Beirut, Lebanon.
Yeah.
And it was kind of on the heels of a couple of bombings of the embassy, the Marine barracks, and then they captured and assassinated the chief of station, Buckley, in Beirut. So we were sent over there in small detachments. I did a couple tours in Beirut, and then of course Panama came right after that, and then working up for the first Gulf War, and then Somalia, and then narco-terrorism was a big time big thing at the time.
Yeah.
So that kind of drove all of our training and doctrine at the time, being up for that. But I really enjoyed those things because each one of them was unique, and you had to go back and start all over and go, hey, how are we going to do this? And so it really taught you how to think about not only what you're going to do, but why you do it, and more importantly, why not other options. So it made us smarter.
Well, I was going to say it was such a unique time. I think unprecedented and probably unparalleled to this day. That just that block of time, right? That we just got out of what they call a 20-year war, and I mean that was it certainly by no means was easy or straightforward or anything, but it was more of a common continuous threat, whereas you were getting thrown kind of all over the world in very, very different environments, surroundings, civilian situations, engagements, tasks. I mean, it was, you got a potpourri of challenges.
Yeah, it really did kind of broaden your experience. You're looking at a lot of different things and considering, do I want to use a whole squadron? Do I want to use one guy? Do I want to use a team? And so you're learning the breadth and scope of what you're capable of doing.
Crash course in a full arsenal of training.
Yeah.
On the ground, real time.
Yeah.
So then we'll jump to the most known. I mean, Beirut was obviously very, very public, and a horrible situation to be in the middle of. Panama was interesting. But then Mogadishu.
Yep, Somalia. It was the most highly publicized, probably operation of the unit. May still very well still be. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, that was the beginning of what we called the JORT cycle. So it was the Joint Operational Readiness Training cycle where we started working across service lines. So we started working with the SEALs, and we started working with the Ranger battalions, and they became a cohort.
Yeah.
So when we would deploy with a portion of Task Force 160th Aviators, a SEAL team, and a company of Rangers. And we paired up, like A Squadron would pair up with the same guys every time, B Squadron would pair up with the same guys every time, C Squadron would pair up with the same guys every time. So
you got to where. What was the first time you did that? Was it Somalia?
Yes, that was the first time that we ever operationally deployed as a team like that.
How was that? Was it a little clumsy and awkward?
It was starting out because it was. I mean, I love the guys. I have much respect for all of them.
But everybody's used to working within their own team.
All of us trying to make that
mesh.
Fit.
Yeah.
And at the time, it wasn't well received by any of us. I don't think the unit guys really liked it down on the team level. I don't think the guys in the SEALs liked it. I don't think the Rangers liked it. They would rather stay and do what they like to do, just like we did. 20/20 hindsight is probably the best thing that we ever did, was because that's a very formidable package. There's nothing that you can't do with that group of guys, right?
No.
And we got really close with them. I worked with the guys up at Red Team quite a bit. Actually yarded in up there at Red Team. That's an experience I'll never forget. And then worked very closely with the Rangers and became good friends, and still good friends today with most of those guys. We're almost seamless as an organization. Yeah.
Well, when you go through something, especially like that conflict, you're certainly bonded forever.
And you find out that they're the same guys that you are, and they just stood in a different line.
Yeah. So you got on the ground quite a bit of time before October 3rd.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact date, but I want to say it was sometime in July, I think we landed over there. And we started, initially went over to capture Muhammad Aidid. And then very shortly after we got there, we found out that he was gone. He left. Right. He wasn't dumb. And so we decided to hang around and go after his lieutenants and his infrastructure. Yeah. And so we were running out, doing raids to capture his key people.
What was your first impression of Mogadishu and kind of the...
So it was a dump, right? I mean, obviously the city was a dump. You could tell at one time it had been a beautiful, beautiful city. Right there.
But, I mean, you'd been in some other conflicts that were, nasty situations, you know, fighting against, a variety of skilled or unskilled people.
Yeah.
You landed there, you get on the ground, you're getting in the thick of stuff. Like
no organization. So if you compared it to like Beirut.
Yeah.
Beirut had factions, but at least within those factions, there were still infrastructure. There were traffic lights that worked. There were people were going about their daily life with some sort of civilized approach. So the stores were open, and in Somalia, I think it was every family for themselves. It was like just this massive
chaos.
City that no infrastructure. And I just remember thinking, if you think about what had happened previously, the terrible famine.
Yeah.
So people were still just starving to death, and really the reason we were there was they were trying to get food to the populace, but these gangs were taking the food and basically using it as power.
Yeah.
And so we went down to make sure that, hey, look, we've got to take out a couple of these leaders so that we can at least get the food
flowing.
The UN guys can deliver it without getting ambushed.
Right.
And so, of course, again, he had left, and we went after his infrastructure, and we were doing fairly frequent missions to capture some of his key leaders, like Omar Salad, League Legato, who was I can't remember the other guys.
But these were some bad dudes.
Bad dudes.
Really bad dudes in a bad area.
Bad dudes.
It had to have felt different, walking around and operating, on those streets in that area than anywhere you'd been before. Yeah,
they were unorganized, but there were a lot of them.
Right.
And they were heavily armed.
And unpredictable.
Unpredictable, but heavily armed.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't going to engage you. They were, decisively engage you. They were going to try to take advantage of you and then run.
Yeah.
hoping that would deter you from doing what you came here to do. Right. And one of the things that we would do is we put together this package to where we could deploy very quickly. So within a few minutes, we could have everybody airborne and be on our target. Guys were sleeping in their gear, you know, and we had a drill down to where we could
constant state of readiness.
Constant state of readiness. We could gear up and go and be on, you know, rotors turning, and we would go put together a plan as team leaders in the TOC, and then we would run out to the aircraft and meet our team on the bird and brief that plan on the aircraft.
Right.
And then a lot of times we'd be airborne and briefing that plan. Now here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We'd draw it on a dry erase board.
Yeah.
So, hey guys, you see this? This is what we're doing.
But as a result of that, I mean, and also because you're working with a combination of forces, you know, a lot of that was you know, you had a rough plan, but there's a lot of fluidity.
Yes.
To that.
Yeah, you had to be able to
improvise,
understand the intent of the mission, and then carry that out. And we got really good at it.
And things have gone pretty smooth.
Things have gone really well. And October 3rd, things were going really well. So we launched in the afternoon of October 3rd, and it was on a Sunday. And
so October 3rd, to you, I mean, it felt like another routine op.
It did. And we were starting to, at that point, things had kind of stalled on us. And we were starting to talk about maybe redeploying back to Bragg, because, you know, he was gone, and we'd kind of
caught some bad
guys. And then this popped up, and we'd had several what I call false alarms, where you'd go in, you'd get all spun up, and nothing would happen. So we all kind of went in that day looking at this and thinking 50-50. You know, but 90% chance. It went from like 90% chance not going to happen to very quickly, well, maybe 75% is going to happen, to like 50-50. Maybe this thing's going to go to like, it's going. And it went really smooth. I mean, we went in.
So the entry was pretty straightforward.
The entry was really a couple of little hiccups here and there, but nothing out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
And it was over within a few minutes. And we went in. They were all textbook. Yeah. We captured the guys. They were all sitting around in a meeting when we got them, and
just as you thought,
just like we thought. And then we started getting ready to move off the target. And the first little glitch, I wouldn't say a little glitch, it was a pretty big glitch. We had one of our Rangers fall off of a fast rope, and really high. I mean, he fell off 60, 70 feet off of a fast rope. And it seriously injured him. Yeah, long bad fall. And right in the middle of the street. And we had, you know, we didn't receive any gunfire in the target. They surrendered pretty quickly. But the longer you stay on the target, people are telling everybody.
It attracts a ton of attention.
They're yelling, hey, you know, they're telling their neighbors are telling their, and they're reacting, like, right? And so they're the bad guys are starting to close and converge on the target. And so what would have normally been an exfil off, now we have a guy that fell off, and now we got to package him and kind of get him ready for a medevac. And the volume of fire started to increase as we sit there and package him.
And at the starting point, you're rooftop and he's down on the street.
Correct. Yeah, we'd all kind of consolidated up on the roof of this target building. And then, of course, as these guys the bad guys are converging on the target, we start to bring assets in for close air support. So we're bringing in helicopters that are engaging with rockets and miniguns, and they're getting closer and closer to the target, and there's more frequent.
And you've still got one of your guys down on the street.
Yep, and then we've got a vehicle convoy that's coming in to pick up the prisoners and move them out. So we're managing that. But the real take-home message was that our time on target was just exponentially, doubling.
Was the original plan to exfil from the roof?
We were going to move to an offsite a block away, get on a helicopter and leave. But we would have been able to do that
from the ground.
Yeah,
with the prisoners.
We were going to put the prisoners on vehicles, have them roll out. So
the plan was always to go to the ground.
Yeah,
move them into vehicles.
Move them to the vehicles, get them rolling, and then us move off site and leave.
Yeah,
and could have done that in a few minutes. It was
straightforward.
Had things gone the way we wanted them to go, that's what would have happened. And then, you're dealing with a casualty, and then you're really trying to support the team on the ground with the aircraft. And we're on the roof, and the helicopter Super 6-1 got hit, and we saw that go in.
And was that the first? I mean, copters have been shot at with RPGs, but they'd never had a hit.
Never been hit, and having shot a lot of RPGs at moving targets, it was hard for me to hit a vehicle going more than 15 miles an hour broadside from 50 meters away. That's a hard shot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a difficult shot. So if somebody had told me, hey, could you hit an aircraft going at 90 knots from 500 meters away, I'd go, not a chance in hell, right? And but I guess if you get enough chances,
you get lucky.
Sooner or later you're going to get it, right? And so, but they were doing what they had to do. They were doing gun runs on bad guys that greatly outnumbered us.
Trying to hold them
trying
back.
To keep them off. Yep.
So you remember obviously the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
It got hit.
Yep. I was like, because now you know this is not going to be a short day. We're going to get over there, do some work, and
your team was how many guys at that time on task?
4 counting me.
4 guys.
4 guys. My team. So there were 4 assault teams. Each one of them had 4, and that was limited by the capacity of the Little Bird.
Yeah.
You could put 2 guys on each side.
So the initial direct action was 16 guys.
16 plus the Ranger blocking position. So I mean, for a swag, probably 100 guys total on the ground.
Yeah.
Right.
Within proximity.
Yeah. So you'd have at each corner, you'd have a Black Hawk full of Rangers with Cruiser M60 machine guns sitting there, blocking guys, and then outside that, the aircraft supporting those blocking positions,
an outer perimeter,
insulating the target from the bad guys. So when that bird went down, it went down outside that perimeter. So they was beyond the blocking position, and of course at that point. I was my ground force commander was a young captain named Scott Miller, awesome guy, still friends today. Ended up being a 4-star general and retired recently, but he was an amazing young officer. Came out of the Ranger Battalion and had just recently, been in Delta. And we sent the prisoners home on the vehicles, which is a whole nother story. And then we put together our team and started moving with Rangers and Delta guys. Everybody towards the crash site to take care of the guys, either recover the dead and wounded, and get that aircraft burned and get out of there. And it's difficult we could see where it went down from the top of the building, but once you get at ground level, it's a different story trying to find it. And it was less than a mile away, and we were trying to find the aircraft, and we knew we were close to it, but we were stopping and taking directions from the command and control bird. And so we'd be in this fire and maneuver mode, and then we would get to a point where we were trying to pinpoint the aircraft, and they would say, okay, 500 meters further up this way and then turn right. It was confusing because they were also talking to a ground vehicle force. And we stopped. And but
at that point, so things have definitely escalated. Adrenaline's high.
Yep.
The whiteboard plane's out the window.
Yep.
But things are still within. You feel like you're still in control of the situation.
Yep. And never felt like we were losing.
Yeah.
And but the volume of fire was increasing, and the number of bad guys was obviously increasing. And then we stopped, and when we stopped at about, I want to say, a couple hundred meters south of that aircraft, still not knowing exactly where it was, but we knew we were close, we took our first casualties, real casualties. And we had a couple of fatalities, several wounded, and one exchange. And then we pulled in off the street into a building and occupied that building and established a casualty collection point where we were treating wounded.
Yeah.
And we still had other elements that were moving, right? We still had blocking positions that were trying to come in and get in position. And one of the other problems is we didn't exactly know where everybody was, so you had to be careful, take extra care when you were engaging these distant targets, because they could very well be friendly. So they were bad guys were kind of between us, right?
Yeah.
And so you're hoping, okay, I'm going to shoot these bad guys, but make sure that you're not
crossfire
and all that stuff. And
it became really the worst of an urban combat situation, because you don't know what window or rooftop or doorway a bad guy's in, and just because they're not there 30 seconds later they may be,
right,
and you don't know which one of your good guys is going to come around the corner facing you. It's very, very fluid.
Yeah, it was got confusing. We established that casualty collection point, and then we took the people that weren't wounded and we started to reset combined teams. So we would have half a team mixed with another half of a team and say, okay, now we're a whole complete team, and start to reconsolidate. And eventually fought our way up to that aircraft, after a couple of hours of trying to reconstitute. And while that had been happening, they had put a SAR team in. The SAR bird, Dan Gelato was flying that bird, put the SAR team in, consisted of Rangers and a few of our guys. And every one of them, I think, was wounded on the crash site, fighting to keep them off. Very heroic story in and of itself. And then we finally linked up with those guys. So
you finally made contact with the crash site.
We did.
And what do you remember feeling when you first made contact?
It was close to midnight by this time now, pitch black. Got there, and the SAR bird had encountered a problem that they were going to recover the bodies and the wounded, because there were survivors on that crash site. But one of the pilots was basically buried underneath the wreckage, and they didn't want to leave him. So they had gone in with their quickie saws and their recovery tools and tried to, the best they could, to get him out of that wreckage, but couldn't do it. I mean, he was really buried under it. And so we went to work continuing their efforts of trying to get him out of there. And it really took, at some point...
So your time on task at the crash site felt like days.
Yeah, we were there all night. And finally...
And are you still taking fire, or had things calmed down?
No, we were taking fire and casualties. And so the longer we stayed there, the worse it got. And finally, the next morning, one of our former commanders showed up with a hodgepodge.
And are you able to get resupplied at this point? So ammo and everything is...
They were flying in and dropping rucksacks of ammo out of a Black Hawk. So they'd fly in, kick the bundle, and then fly off and get another one. Right. And I just remember the little birds from Task Force 160th doing gun run after gun run after gun run, danger close with rockets and miniguns. And I was just amazed at what those guys were able to do with a helicopter. I was thinking, man, even to this day I think about it and go, man, they were just amazing group of guys.
Yeah, the courage of those pilots to
do that and keep doing it.
To stay in the fight.
Keep doing it.
Yeah.
They would go back, drop an empty bird off, get into a bird. They would have a crew would have a rotors turning on another bird. They would jump right out of one seat into the other, fly back, do their gun run. They would reload the other bird. They'd come back and just flip birds. And it was just amazing.
So the whole station at this point is just everybody.
Yep, all hands
is
on deck.
On task.
Yep. Yeah. And meanwhile, I wasn't on it, but the vehicular convoy with the prisoners was going through their own hell.
Right.
They were going through ambush after ambush after ambush, and I mean, I wasn't there, so I won't tell their story, but it's one of the greatest heroic things in the history of the U.S. military.
Yep.
We finally managed to get the pilot out, and then loaded our dead, wounded onto the armored vehicles that had come in overnight, and then started our rollout home, which became known as the Mogadishu Mile. And we rolled out, got back to the Paki Stadium, and it was then I realized on foot. And I looked around the stadium, and the magnitude of it stood out. Because when you're in it, you're thinking about your 1 meter of ground. When I got back, I saw, just wounded guys everywhere, vehicles that were, had been shot to pieces. I saw 10th Mountain guys from the Ranger Battalion, unit members, and I was just like, look at this. And it was just baffling, the scale of what had happened. And they came up and said, hey, get ready, we got another bird down. And I went, what are you talking about?
So you're at the stadium at this point, you're like, holy shit, I lived.
Yep.
Like, we're okay. Like, check. We're good now. And you're like, what?
They're going to get everybody get ready. We're getting on the helos. We're going back to the hangar. We're going to get reloaded. And we're going to go find these other guys. And we were like, what other bird? And we had no idea that another aircraft had gone down up to that point.
And how far away was that?
It wasn't very far, but it was in the opposite direction of the first one. So it was probably...
So it wasn't backtracking through what you'd just been through?
It was, so if you imagine a target building,
triangle.
And then you had, and then you had one that was the northernmost crash site and one that was on the opposite side of it. But we were looking at each other going, what helo? What are we talking about? And so we went back to the hangar, geared up, and then
went back out.
Went back out looking for it, and then of course it turned into. By the time we found it, there was nobody there. They had taken a prisoner, Mike Durant. Right. Everybody else was on that bird was dead, but there were no bodies on the site. They had taken him off and mutilated him and all that stuff. But after a few days.
So what were you thinking? At this point, you're just mentally and physically, you got to be on autopilot.
Yeah, and you're angry. And you're like, okay, now it's a fight. Now we're not going to go back in nice next time. And they negotiated the release of Mike Durant, and then shortly after we redeployed back to Bragg. So it was it in a nutshell.
So you got Mike back, and you're back on station before you go to Bragg. How much time passes before you're heading back to Bragg?
After Mike Durant comes back, about a week.
Yeah,
about a week if I remember right.
So you're sitting around base before you're going back home for a week.
In Mogadishu. Yeah, we're sitting in the hangar.
What was that week like?
It was very somber, right? And I remember, of course, we're doing a lot of after action reviews, like what happened, what can we do better? Because at some point you're thinking, okay, while we're here. We're not gone yet, but we could go right back out there and do it again. But we're rehearsing.
How many men were lost?
We lost 6. There were 19 total. 19 total fatalities on October 3rd, which is why we have the Gothic Serpent cigar with 19 stars on it. Yeah. But 6 from the unit. I think we had 6 from the Ranger Battalion, and then couple Task Force 160th guys, and then 10th Mountain as well.
Yeah.
But heroic group of guys. Yeah.
It absolutely goes down as one of those things I hope nobody ever forgets in the history of America.
Yeah, I mean, you don't realize it at the time because you're still trying to take it all in, but you had no idea that it would have the impact that it had on the Army. Changed. And the silver lining of it was that it prepared. The Army readjusted their training and their gear and the way they did things, and it prepared them for things to come that they would see in the global war on terror.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, for 20 years, we entered that with I think a whole lot more experience and intel as a result of Somalia.
Yeah.
You guys really set the groundwork for, I think, saving a lot of soldiers' lives and preparing and equipping them for what they faced in the Middle East for a long time.
Yeah.
So holy cow, that's so you get back to Bragg, and how did that change you?
Obviously, each one of those guys was a personal loss, right?
Yeah.
But the unit, of course, we refocused the way we trained, but they picked up and kept moving. I mean, and moved right into the next problem set. It was, which is what they do.
And psychologically too, there's no greater fighting force in the world, right? And after you go out on a number of engagements successfully, because of your training, because of the teamwork, because you're fighting for your brothers in a greater cause, there almost has to be a small feeling of invincibility.
Sure.
And that experience, was probably a bit humbling.
Yeah, it definitely was. You realize that you're 50% of what happens on the battlefield. The other 50% is the enemy, right? And they bring their plan too. And it may be a shitty plan, but it has effect on what's going to happen to you. So if you look at 2 football teams that play, you may have a good one and a bad one, but the other team you still got to beat them, right? And so it caused us to really think about what we did.
Yeah.
But I really don't know that we would have made it through that had we not been as prepared as we were. We were very well prepared going in. We were trained with best training, no expense spared, the best soldiers in the world, the best gear. I mean, and we made it through it. And we did, not just one mission that day. There were several missions. There was a capture mission. There was a SAR mission. There was a couple of SAR missions. There were medevacs. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on. And that particular task force handled it as well as any unit
Absolutely.
could. I mean, there were a lot of things we did wrong, for sure. I mean, and I like we talked about the other day, I don't want to hear about the things that went right, because that's not something we learn from. We did a lot of things wrong, and myself included. There were ground up stuff that I look back on, and we're not going to do that again. Like going in the middle of the day, thinking, I don't need nods, I'm only going to be there 30 minutes, right? You might not be there 30, you might be there for a couple of days, so take those NBGs with you, because when night comes, it's a big advantage.
Right.
Right? Especially if you've trained with them.
Yeah.
Right? But if you don't have them, then you're on equal footing with them, with the exception that they know the terrain. They know the neighborhood. And so little things like that as a leader, that I could, if I could go back and change, sure I would. I made a lot of mistakes. And it made me a better person, it made me a better soldier.
It's one of the things I admire about you most, Norm, is, your, not just your humility and the fact that, if there ever was an American hero, you embody it in every possible way. But the fact that you're so open and transparent about that, and especially, like at a time like this in America, I think in an era of participation trophies and the expectation that everybody's flawless and nobody makes mistakes, and it's just such a fallacy, right? I think that I tell everybody, I've made a million mistakes, it probably millions. I celebrate it, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to make life-changing mistakes. I don't want to make the same mistake twice, but I only learned the hard way.
Yeah.
And
I think failure is just an opportunity to grow. You can, if you let it be. Right. If you pick yourself up and go, I'm going to keep on learning and keep on trying, and I'm not going to give up. I'm going to come back better than I was before. Not only technically better, but emotionally better, a better person. And all those lessons were learned. In Somalia.
Well, I think, there's just so many universally applicable lessons to be learned from what you say and, what you share. That, I think your approach, your mindset of constantly learning, being transparent about what you have learned from things, and therefore applying that to future, whatever it is you do, is a lesson that, honestly, I think every kid in America, every kid globally should, be taught and pounded in, more than algebra. If you're going to set kids up for success, teach them how to courageously fail.
Sure.
And learn, from those mistakes.
Don't be afraid of it.
For their whole life.
Yeah, don't be afraid of it. If you're out there pushing the limit to any degree, you're gonna fail. You're gonna have good days and bad days, and the bad days really define you as a person, right?
Well, how you handle the bad days, right?
Yeah, how you deal with it, and do you let it make you a better person, or do you let it cripple you as a person? And it's really a great opportunity anytime you encounter adversity of any type in any facet of your life. It's an opportunity to become a better person.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful for the things that happened to me.
Yeah.
Throughout my life, not only in the Army, but the things that the struggles you go through as a child in growing up and becoming an adult, things that you look at a time and go, why is this happening to me?
Right.
And then as an adult, you go, I'm glad it happened to me.
Right.
Thankful for it.
Yeah.
It made me better. And, you know, it's really just training you for something different, something better.
Well, it's mental training, mental conditioning. So, you know, you obviously spent the rest of your career in the military, and we could talk, you know, for weeks about all of that. You know, but at the point you decided to, you know, finally exit is a you know, an interesting story, right? So, you know, so that ends up being a family discussion with your wife, and you know, I always say that, you know, no matter how great the men are who serve and how courageous they are, that, you know, the things that they do, you know, in pursuit of service to our country and, you know, defending our freedoms, the true unsung heroes are the family back at home, you know, that allowed those men to be able to do that successfully. For sure. So, so your wife served right along with you. She put in a bunch of years. Yep. And together you made the decision, it's time to move on to a new chapter. Yeah. So, you know, as I said, there's very few individuals in American history that I can think of that embody the word hero more than you. And so you decide, with all that training, all that wisdom, all that experience, you decide to start a new chapter as a civilian doing what?
So, retired because I had small, young kids. Felt it was better for my family. Loved the Army. Loved the unit. Had never done anything else. Had never envisioned myself doing anything else. Didn't know how to do anything else.
And you spent how many years in your career?
About 22 years now.
Okay.
And so, but we made a family decision for me to get out. Didn't know what I was going to do, but my wife, it was a pharmacist, and she said, "Hey, why don't you go to pharmacy school, and we could open up a pharmacy together, and you could have a normal life." And so, scary thing for me to do. I'd never done very well in school, you know, but to take on something like that, which was, you know, pharmacy school is fairly challenging. It's not something that you go into, you know, without thinking about it. And so, had never worked an algebra problem successfully and up to that point. And my wife sat down with me and basically tutored me through the prerequisites. And I was fortunate enough to get accepted to Campbell School of Pharmacy in North Carolina. Got out of the Army on terminal leave in August of 2001, started pharmacy school. And then a month later, 9/11 happened. And gave me the excuse to get recalled back into the Army. So they recalled me back into the Army, and then I was assigned to the Air Marshals, helping them with their training program. Yeah. Along with other guys, not just me. There were several other guys from across the service lines. And spent a while, about a year doing that, and then ended up parlaying that into a full-time government job as the National Training Coordinator for their Special Mission Unit in the Air Marshals. It was called the Global Response Teams, or the FAMS EMT, which was like their emergency management team. Right. There were a lot of aircraft going in and out of high threat areas like Afghanistan and at the Iraq Baghdad International Airport. Right. And so they would fly those missions, and I was part of the training team for that, and was the national training coordinator for this team that was spanned the country, and did that for about 7 years or so, and then took a job in Jordan as the deputy director of the King Abdullah Special Operations Training Center. Did that for 4 or 5 years. That's a whole other adventure. And then after I left there, working with Admiral Larson at a big global group, who was they had the contract for Kasodic. On his suggestion, went back to pharmacy school at 52. Got my doctorate in pharmacy, and then did 2 residencies, and currently work for the VA as a pharmacist. So
I mean, even if that were the whole story, right? I mean, just starting at 52, you know, remolding your whole life for the next chapter. Yeah. Getting a doctorate.
Yeah, scary mission.
Yeah, you told me a story that I was really moved by. So you show up your first day at pharmacy school, and you're pulling up to the building.
Yep.
How was that?
So 52 years old. I'm thinking, well, I'm definitely going to be the oldest student, and then of course I was like 10 years older than the dean of pharmacy school. And walked into the lobby, and we're standing around waiting for, pharmacy school to start. And there's, about 100 of us in there. And most of them were in their early to mid-20s. And man, I had kids older than that, and it was, I was so out of place. I remember the feeling of just guts boiling, and just horror of like, what am I doing? I mean, and because I had other options, I could go be a contractor somewhere and it was comfortable for me to do those things. And this was the most uncomfortable feeling I'd ever experienced. And I remember walking back out to my car thinking, I'm not going to do this, and sat down and had my first panic attack that I'd ever had. It was just like this anxiety that kicked in, like, what am I doing? And I just wanted to run.
So you told me that, and I think that's so unbelievable for most people, right? Because sharing the stories of what you've been through, right? I mean, your childhood, your upbringing, military, Somalia, I mean, when you guys paused and took your first casualties, that those men were standing right next to you.
Yeah.
And then there was another 10, 12, 13 hours to go yet before that was over technically. And your first anxiety was in the parking lot getting ready to go to school.
Yep. It was just this, everything I'd done up to that point, even though it may have been uncomfortable for me, it was stuff that I felt that I was prepared for.
Yeah.
I mean,
you had the training for it.
Yeah, I had the training for it. I had the personality for it. I was with people who were like me, that I could look around and go, hey, if I'm uncomfortable, this guy's uncomfortable too.
Right.
So I'm.
But walking into a room full of 20-year-old
that
students.
I had nothing in common with.
Yeah.
And, being probably the slowest zebra in the herd.
Yeah.
Right. And
what were you afraid of? Were you afraid of failing? Were you afraid of being judged?
All of it. All of it. Yeah. And then, but that what pulled me out of it was I sat there in that car and I thought, look, man, one, I can't let my family down, but two, by God, I'm a Delta operator, man.
Right. Right.
And I'm not going to look at those guys in the eye and go, hey guys.
What tapped me out was pharmacy school.
Yeah, no, I just wasn't going to do it. And I felt obligated to them. I was like, these are, they wouldn't have thought lesser of me, but I was like, I'm not, man, and by the way, I'm representing a community.
Yes.
Right? And so if I step out here and what are these kids going to say, these 22, 24-year-old kids, oh, there was a Delta guy here, he flunked out of pharmacy school, he quit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not going to happen. As much as I might have wanted to, it wasn't something I was going to do.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to go back and look at my kids and go, I didn't do it. And I had other options. I could have gone and made a lot more money doing other stuff.
Oh, sure.
But still, I would have had to tell them, I quit.
Yeah. So now you go through pharmacy school, you've got your doctorate, you can certainly own and work in your own pharmacy, quietly and make plenty of money, have a nice quiet life. But instead that call of service, and supporting your team and taking care of your brothers, continued to call on you. Instead, you did what?
I went to work for the VA, and I never thought I would have, because I had only heard, I was not enrolled as a patient in the VA because everybody told me don't bother. It's a crappy organization, and they're they suck. And so I had a really low opinion of the VA. But you also, I mean, as unique as your military career is in every possible way, another especially unique, especially for all the combat and action that you saw, you came out relatively healthy. I did, yeah, and I was blessed.
I mean, you didn't come out with major injuries or pain I was
blessed. I have, of course, the normal 30 years under a rucksack kind of stuff, but I wasn't, I came out with all
So you really had no experience with the VA or the need for ongoing medical care?
And I
But you heard all the stories, certainly.
Yeah, I retired, so I have TRICARE, so I didn't need to go to the VA for care. But I'd heard horror stories that reached all the way back to Vietnam era vets about rat-infested hospitals and stuff like that, right? So, but in my second year of pharmacy school, there was an internship called the Valor Internship, and it was with the VA. And so I thought, well, it'd be good to get a look at that, you know, and so I could understand it more, and it'd be good exposure for me because a lot of these people that I was in school with had either worked as pharmacy technicians or were currently working as technicians. So they were getting practical experience while they were getting the academic experience. And I had no practical experience. So I thought I need to get some practical experience somewhere, and this may be a good place to do it. So I applied for the Valor internship at West Palm Beach Hospital, VA Hospital, and got it. And then I spent a year there, 2 years actually, as an intern. And while I was there, I realized that, man, some of the best medical care in the world is in the VA. It's not the care, it's the access to the care that's the issue.
Right.
Right. But the people that are the providers of care are awesome.
Yeah.
Right. And but getting access to it, but two, how do you? Most vets go into it, they don't even know how to begin to get into the VA. It's a very convoluted process. But I learned a lot in the VA, and I very quickly began to catch up and pass and experience some of the guys I was with in class because of my opportunities to learn in the VA. Right. Fell in love with it. Got to work alongside people in the pain clinic and in the PTSD clinic and in the mental health clinics, and got to see all those things tied together. And I thought, this would be something I'd be interested in doing. I think I could pay back here. Yeah. And so went on and wanted to learn more about it. Still had really not an intention to work in the VA, but I really had talked to other people about opening up a facility that catered to special operations guy that was kind of like a transitional facility coming out, dealing with chronic pain and PTSD and all the stuff that you deal with coming out, and was going to do that on the commercial side and as a non-profit, right? And then realized that the VA's doing that. It's not that it's already being done. It's just the access that's the issue. And so in the process of doing 2 residencies with the VA after I graduated pharmacy school, I was offered a job and accepted a job there, and did my first couple of years working in the mental health field as a pharmacist, and then transitioned into telehealth. Now is what I do. But the VA has got awesome care. It's just getting in it and then navigating the process of it. Right.
You found that calling in second chapter of your life, to be equally fulfilling. You probably saw a lot of mistakes and learned and, helped them adapt, to improve the system, improve the quality of care. Yep. So how many years have you been involved now with the VA?
So I graduated in 2016. If you count my internship, it's 2, 4. I've been in there about 7 years now. Yeah. Counting my internship and residency.
That's an amazing chapter. So in the midst of that, now you run into this character. So what the heck? So you guys are friendly. You're hanging out doing guy stuff. And all of a sudden,
guy stuff being smoking and drinking. That's basically all we did.
Well, what else do you guys do, right? Yeah. I mean, according to our wives, that's all we do.
We kept out of trouble. We don't get in trouble very often, but we had the wife approval that he could come over to my house, I can go to his house, and
so
it's a great hall pass to have.
I've told Tim this, and it may be hard to believe, but I can count on one hand the people I've had under my roof that were strangers, and since I left the Army. Well, because we're very private people.
Yep. I just walk into his house. It's funny because I go, "Hey guys, I'm here," and they go, "Okay."
We hit it off, and we did a lot of laughing. Yeah. A lot of cutting up. He's funny as hell. Great to hang out with. While we were laughing and cutting up, we were smoking cigars and drinking whiskey.
He already said you're the bad influence that introduced him to all this debauchery.
It's the other way around, man.
Well, look at this wholesome, Texas boy. Like, it had to be somebody like you that, led him to the life of debauchery, right?
Corrupted him. But we just really hit it off, and it got to where, like, I actually missed not having him around. I was like, hey, let's go. We would back and forth. We lived about a mile away, Of course, he lives in the what I call the country club, and I lived in the hood down the road. But so I had to go check in through the gate every day to get there. But we just hit it off.
Yeah.
And with no intention of having a business or anything.
You're just being friendly.
Just laughing and cutting up. And it was 2018, late summer, and October 3rd was coming up. The 25th anniversary of October 3rd was coming up. And we had, by this point, we had smoked a lot of cigars and drank a lot of whiskey. And I thought I'd like to share this with my buddies at Bragg. So I wanted to make cigars. I said, hey, probably about, and Tim was like, how many you think? I'm thinking a couple of hundred probably. And so Tim knew Z, because Tim used to go get his contraband through Z, and he goes, I got a friend that's a Cuban guy that makes cigars. And so he got the ball rolling. Tim said, hey, we'll do it. And so we had 300 cigars made.
Well, it really wasn't even a question. It was like, we're doing it. I mean, you asked the question. I said, well, no, we're doing it.
I just kind of threw it out there, but you were the one that said, okay, we're going to do it.
Exactly.
So we got the cigars made, and then we thought, well, we should make a special band. You know, and we sat around just like we're doing here, talking about how we want to do it.
It was actually a piece of paper, and we're trying to draw it out and so forth. One thing he didn't tell you is that he went back to Ranger School while he was in Delta. And then he became... Pardon me?
I did, before Somalia.
That's right. And then you became #1 in the Ranger class. So we were trying to figure out how do you build in the military logo or build something in there. Of course, we couldn't put the Delta stuff. But he said, well, I was in Ranger class. Well, it shows this dagger and so forth. Well, let's use this dagger. And I went, oh, man, that sounds good. So we kind of, on a piece of paper.
We drew it up on a cocktail napkin.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And then, but we drew the bands up ourselves, did the design work on them.
Yeah.
And Z had a buddy that printed bands, so he printed them. I thought we printed them at home, but Z was going, no, I think Action Label printed those. So Action Label printed a couple hundred bands for us. We glue sticked them on there and took them up to Fort Bragg.
We took a normal cigar off the shelf. I mean, a cigar that Z was making, and we said, okay, we'll just use that.
Yeah.
And you took them up there. It was a hit.
Yeah, it was a hit. People started ordering them.
And then we look at each other and go like, hey,
we couldn't give that. We're like, hey, we can give away 300, but we can't give away 3,000. We can't.
No, but we didn't even know what a box was.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you make a box? What do you put in a box? So if you see our current box here, this has Mogadishu and the 2 sides and so forth and the history.
That's the first cigar. This
is our very first cigar.
25th anniversary, Gothic Serpent cigar. And then basically it was made to remember. We came up with a slogan, well, why are we doing this? Well, because we want to remember the events,
yes.
right? So we made to remember became the slogan. Of course, Z worked with us on refining the cigars and the artwork and stuff. We actually had some professional.
Yeah. Actually, Z's here. Come on over here, Z. Jump into the party.
Well, let's first start saying we call him Z. He wants to be called Z, but his real name is Azarius Mustafa.
Okay, we'll stick with Z.
Yeah, Z.
I think Z's good.
It's a lot easier, but
so, you kind of green light that. Okay, there's enough interest in this. I had fun with this. This may be a cool little, project of sorts, and maybe we generate a little bit of money to give a little money back, and we smoke a lot of cigars, so at the very least we've got our own cigars, right?
And there's been a lot, and from my experience and what I've seen in the past, there's been a lot of what I call commemorative cigars. A lot of times they're not really good though.
No, most are actually, in fact, really bad.
Yeah, and they're. But I wanted to make sure that the cigars that we gave out to remember that event were as special as the people that were smoking them. So, so of course, couldn't have gone to a better guy. Z's probably forgotten more about the cigar business than any of us will ever learn at this point in life, and he really guided us through it. But they were not only commemorative, they didn't look cheap, they were well packaged. So we had another guy join the team that's in our marketing division. Awesome artwork and design. This was professionally done, other than something we drew on a cocktail napkin.
Right.
And then and we wanted to make sure that the cigars were something we were going to be proud of. And I think Tim was one that said, "Hey, look, I'm not sending anything up there that I'm not going to smoke or drink myself."
Right.
Right. And that kind of sums it up.
when you first wanted to, just give 300 cigars to your buddies, I mean, like most commemorative cigars like that, I mean, I'm sure you weren't expecting much. Like, you didn't want to give them crappy cigars, but it was more about the gift than some amazing smoking. So it was kind of accidental blessing that Tim knew Z, and Z's as good at what he's doing as he is, that led to everybody going, hey, this is actually a really good cigar. Can I get more?
Yep.
So it's actually Z's fault that you ended up in business.
It is exactly Z's fault that we ended up in business. Because truthfully, had it not been something that everybody wanted more of, we would have just done it.
It would have been one and done, which was all the expectation
well,
was.
If you remember that we talked to my wife about it because we were investing in this business. It wasn't a business, it was a hobby. And she said to us, let you know, whatever you don't sell, you're going to smoke. And I looked at Norm.
Is that a threat? Okay.
I said, well, hey, we're pretty good then. We're going to be smoking a lot. I mean, that was the whole intent. I mean, it was like going, hey, if it didn't work out, it's okay.
Right.
And but our foundation was really built on, our friendship, our group, our integrity of our group, and so forth. And how do we give back to those families, the veteran families, and so forth? So we thought, well, this is a good way to kind of give back to those groups, and they can be part of the kind of the deal. And we never thought it was really we didn't think it was going to work. We had no idea. We just thought, let's just try this. And it was ironic enough, we did our first cigar was the Gothic Serpent, which you know about. And of course, to remind everybody, the 19 stars are the 19 soldiers that died at the event and so forth. And so we always want to remember those 19. So then we started thinking, well, what do we do next? And our next cigar was the Overlord.
Yeah, it was around the 75th anniversary of Overlord, and we started thinking, hey, look, there's a lot of, I mean, it doesn't get any more heroic than Operation Overlord, right? So we thought, hey, look, as a tribute to those great warriors, we'd follow up with Operation Overlord, and we had time to put a little more thought into it. So, so everything that we do on the boxes and stuff is a subtle reminder of things they did. So if you look on the Operation Overlord box, you'll see that there's a map of the North Atlantic and all the beaches of Normandy. The outside of the box is the patch of the Allied forces that was worn that day. The length of the cigar is at Churchill because he was one of the masterminds. So it's all subtle.
Yeah. But thoughtful.
Yeah, very thoughtful. But we don't want it to be overtly in your face kind of, death from above kind of stuff. We want it to be classy and high quality cigars, but nonetheless a tribute to those guys.
Yeah.
Something that they'll be proud to put on their desk or in their office.
Yeah. So Z, so describe the construction and the makeup of Gothic Serpent.
The Gothic Serpent comes in two sizes. It's a torpedo, 6 1/4 length by 52, and the total is 6 by 50. They both have a Habano Oscuro wrapper from Ecuador and 100% filler from Nicaragua. 3 different regions.
Okay.
So that's a really special cigar.
Beautiful cigar, very, very well made, very smokable. Kind of one of those, everybody's going to love this cigar. So then, with Overlord, what did you guys, put to work for that?
We did a Churchill size, 7 by 48, like an original size from Cuba from back in the days. Because now they got Churchills that are 49, 50,
52. Yeah.
But,
who
48.
knows?
And we went with a Connecticut wrapper to be able. It's a long cigar, so we want anybody to be able to smoke it, So if you are somebody that likes full body cigar, you can have that one in the morning with coffee or But if you like mild, that's the one for you. And it sells pretty good. I mean, maybe it's not Tim's favorite out of the 9.
Well, some people call it a breakfast cigar.
Yeah.
Because
he likes a little bit more
taste to it. Well, actually, I had something strong this morning, but we progressively have gone. We have we started off with the Gothic Serpent Overlord, then we went to the 2020, and after the 2020 we went to the Modus, and then currently that we have on the shelf is also the Paladine series. So we kind of progressively gone through and adding more lines, different tastes, different blends, all that kind of stuff, but always in the process of telling some kind of story.
Right.
It's, remember again, made to remember.
Right.
We're there for, hey, listen, we want the stories to begin. We're trying to pull people away from their iPhones and pull people away from the TV so they can actually communicate.
Right.
Let's talk about these things.
Right.
Let's talk about what our needs are in our community and so forth. So so in some way, it's become more than just a cigar. It's become a kind of a way of living, you know, talking and communicating.
Yeah, and equally, I mean, honoring, you know, those who have come before us and served,
Exactly.
and you know, allowed us the freedom to, you know, sit here and enjoy this afternoon in each other's company, and you know, in your ongoing trend of service, you know, you're giving back with every sale.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we are. You know, we support. And started early. Before we even started making a dime, we started supporting veterans causes. We supported a lot of charity events.
Well, it was funny because actually we were losing money and we gave more money away. It was kind of like going, oh, we just did this. Oh, I
Good
can't
thing
believe
I had
it.
a day job.
Exactly. Well, and I had to borrow some money from my wife. But I will tell you is that it has been seriously fun, but we love the part. Our biggest thing is I think we get a bigger thrill about giving it out and giving it to these organizations like the Unifund or the JSOT Foundation and so forth. There's many other ones we do it to. We do the Folds of Honor. We also have a Folds of Honor cigar now that we are just introduced, and we actually sold some through the Gothic Serpent side. Sold every one of them. Everyone we had done has sold out.
Oh, wow.
And now with the new one coming out, we're doing about 800 coming out here next month or so, right?
Yeah, a couple of weeks.
And
ago.
800 boxes.
And Folds of Honor's already told me, they said,
It's already
those
done.
are going to be all sold. So
Wow.
now we're in the process of going back to Nicaragua and say, hey, listen, we need more boxes.
Right.
So, you know, you just never know how you do it. And people say, how's the marketing? You got to spend a ton of money on marketing. Well, it's all been organic. It's been word of mouth. You know, most of our stuff, am I right, has been, you know, dealing with people that we know in the military or in Congress or whatever, and they love our brand, love our story, and love the product.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we talked earlier about authenticity, and you know, it's a sad story that it's become so rare that when people see it, they seem to race towards it, right? Because it's become so rare and special that, you know, an individual or a brand is truly authentic. But you know, you guys, it's interesting. So hold up this box down here, and you know, tell us about, you know, like even just the attention to detail of you know, the Ma Deuce, which
I do want to start by saying that when we first started doing this project, we were talking about it beforehand, but we have another partner and good friend of ours, family member. His name is Mark Taylor, and he has a son who has
He has autism.
autism. And so it was interesting. If we already kind of started this idea, but then his son with autism wanted to present to us three the project of doing a Ma Deuce box. So we sit there and we listen to him. So if you open this up, there's a paper in here that will talk about how Mark Taylor, his son, what's his name?
Clint Taylor.
Clint.
Yeah.
And essentially that he has autism, but he actually assisted us in putting this together. And so that's how it started. In a sense of that.
Put together an amazing PowerPoint presentation on the
Right.
on the
He did
concept.
such a good job,
Yeah,
right?
awesome.
Yep.
And his idea was to do a cigar that looked like a 50 caliber bullet. And it's never been done.
right?
And at the same time, I was messing around with a cigar that looked like that. And we went and I asked Norm, I said, hey, send me pictures of the bullet and an enamel can to see if we can make it. And they did it. They did it in Nicaragua pretty good.
Yeah, awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's very, very unique. You know, and what I like about it is it's an amazing cigar, right? And you say you don't spend any money on marketing, and you know, that's kind of one of my beefs about, you know, a lot of the industries that we work in is, you know, you've got some of these 800-pound gorilla companies, you know, that, you know, whether it's with a celebrity or not, they'll come out with a pretty mediocre cigar, but, you know, put an amazing label or wrapper on it, put it in amazing packaging, jack the price up through the roof, you know, sending the message that this must be premium, and you know, and just making it a volume, high margin play that, you know, I'm sure some corporate CFO loves looking at on the spreadsheet, but doesn't really do anything to serve their audience.
That's right.
And what I love about what you guys do is, you know, you're clearly thinking outside the box. Like the construction of Ma Deuce is very, very unique, It's an amazing smoking and tasting cigar. The packaging is amazing, right? And even when you think about, how because part of who you serve also are the retailers that sell your cigars, right?
Yeah.
And part of that is helping them sell through cigars, because you can't expect every person working at every retailer, to sit there and tell the whole story of Hooten Young, right? It's just not going to happen. But you've been very clever in your subtle way of setting your product apart, not making it too flashy, but certainly classy, certainly under-promising and over-delivering with everything from the price point to the packaging to everything. I mean, and retailers, especially something like Mondeuse or Gothic Serpent, the challenge with retailers, I think, is always how to transition that casual smoker into a passionate smoker. How to transition from, single stick sales to box sales, right? And that's always a tough transition, with consumers, right? And it takes a commitment and investment, both financially and space-wise and humidors, to buy at the box level. But you guys packaging things in this way, making the boxes almost a collectible that you want to display even after the fact,
yes,
is just a very, very thoughtful move.
But you actually led right into our cigar box called the Paladin. Now, why don't you talk about the Paladin and why we went there?
Yes, our newest release, and we started out making cigars for service men and women, and at some point we realized, with the cost of getting these things to the shelf, that we were pricing out a lot of the people that we started for. So a young NCO on a military base can't afford to walk in and pay $25 for a cigar,
right,
or $300 a box. So we wanted to come up with something that was still a high quality, handmade, premium cigar, but something that they could afford, right? And something we could proudly put into something like an AFIS store on base, and they would be proud of it when they took that home or gave it to a friend. But it wasn't gonna break the bank for them. So we took 2 years and basically trying to figure out how we were going to bring that, still keep the quality, but put it in a package that they could take home and be just as proud of as I would be of the Mondeuse. And we finally kind of broke the code on it and released the Paladin. And Bobby Newman of JC Newman Cigars is carrying it in the AFI station. Our AFI stores, distributing it for us, and it's so far. I mean, we've had the thing out about a couple of weeks now, and every time I check, it's going off the shelf.
And that retail price point's what?
$8 retail.
$8 a stick.
Yeah.
And it's actually pretty good.
It's a Toro 6x52.
Yeah, it's a great cigar.
But it's funny how things kind of lead, because we've talked about a couple things about our company. We're a lot different than probably 99% of the companies out there. And the reason why is because we didn't do this. We're not working to live. We live to work. And our idea is to live to work, to give back.
Right.
And so our motto in our company is just a lot different than most.
Right.
We're not worried about paying our bills. We're worried about how much more we can give out. So we don't have any labor, and we have no overhead. I mean, I use the top of my garage for my office. We use his offices. Everybody has their little spots. And so, yes, at some point we're probably going to need to do that, but hopefully not anytime soon. But we also started a new line, which will be coming out. Actually, we have a package for them called the Neptune Spear. And if you ever heard that name before, that is what? The Bin Laden raid.
Correct.
And so we really didn't have anything that really hit the Navy guys, right?
I had a couple buddies of mine in the Navy who go, "Hey, man, we're not getting any love on the cigar side from you guys. So,
right.
And by the way, we do stuff too."
Right.
And so, okay, we'll make it happen. And I love those guys. And so, spent a lot of time with Red Team when I was in, and have some dear friends that, they're old now too. And so I wanted to extend our circle into and remember the things they've done as well. And really, this whole thing started out as a small group of friends meeting together, having a good time, smoking cigars, drinking whiskey, and sharing stories and bonding. And we just really wanted to extend that circle, and it's just gotten bigger and bigger and more inclusive as we've gone.
Yeah. So is that already out, or is it yet to come out?
Well, right now we have it in package.
Yeah, we're working on the box, but we have a 4-pack on the site. People can try if they like.
In addition to that, we also have our highest end cigar, and it is our best cigar, called the Operator. And we have it in a bag form right now, is that correct? And we have a box that's coming out. We'll have the box one in a couple months now or something.
Just talking to Nicaragua right before I jump in here.
Yeah, and I gotta tell you this, it is a damn good cigar. But it's a little pricey. So what happens, it's not because it does cost us a lot more money to make it, but I will tell you, so we're trying to hit some forms here, and we'll continue to grow the cigar brand. But in that meantime, do you want to talk about the whiskey?
Well, I was just about to get there. So before we jump into, because you guys aren't busy enough apparently, or your clock just has more hours in the day than mine does. So the Folds of Honor, tell me a little bit about that project, and you kind of glanced over it, but.
Well, I actually was approached. We both were approached, but about a year and a half ago, about the Folds of Honor. And Norm, you could probably say more what they do with Don. Is it Don or Dan? I think it's Dan, the colonel that.
Folds of Honor, great organization. They help educate and support the children and families of fallen heroes, and. They reached out and wanted to collaborate. We were actually at a golf tournament in Orlando. Met them, and they were like, "Hey, this is cool. We love your stuff. We'd like to collaborate, and wonder if you guys could help us with product to support our efforts." And of course, that's why we started. Right? And so the answer is yes. We don't know how we're going to do it,
right?
But the good news is we know we are going to do it.
Yeah.
Right? So. And so we went in, all in, and it's developed into now, we started with just the standard box of Gothic Serpent with a sticker on it that said, Folds of Honor. And then now we've developed a box especially for those guys, and it's evolving. Our relationship with them is evolving, and it's very rewarding when you see what they do.
Well, I've seen the box, and I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's something that's super special. So, from the beginning, all this started on the back porch of, you corrupting, this innocent boy into drinking and smoking. And, hand in hand, in all these conversations was whiskey, right? So what, now that you've, one important note that I do want to mention. So, we've just gone through what for any company would be a very impressive lineup. And all of this was done in what amount of time? How long have you, when did you produce those first 300 cigars as a gift?
Late September of 2018.
2018?
2018.
Yeah.
So just before October. In fact, we were banging them the night before I took the road trip up to go to Fort Bragg to give them out. And so
really in just a few short years with COVID and everything else in the middle of all that, you guys have managed to not only produce a very, very impressive line, but between your whiskey line and your cigar line, and we'll talk about whiskey in just a second here, you've already got a very strong presence and footprint across the nation, which is something that in these industries is very, very difficult to do. Very difficult for even existing brands to break in with product line extensions, much less a brand new company with a brand new brand, not backed by one of the 800-pound gorillas, to get this kind of placement. So, I mean, what do you attribute that to?
We're just very genuine, you know, in what we do. We're motivated by all the right reasons. I think if you're doing things for the right reasons and you do them the right way, that good things are going to happen. And truthfully, if nothing more than making great friends in the process, and that's really it for us, for me, and I know I speak for the other guys, that's reward enough.
Yeah.
And then if you manage to turn it into a successful business along the way, it's the pride in building something. You know, that, and you know, the money is always great, but the accomplishment, the sense of accomplishment that you get from building something that's going to be long lasting is something that you can't really describe it.
We're doing it with friends.
Yep.
I mean, we're basically not only become friends, but our family. We Z just had a baby. And he's a Hooten baby now. And then a lady named Courtney is having a baby here soon. It's gonna be a Hooten baby. You know, we're like going. So this has become our little family extension of our family, right?
Right.
So it's been quite fun.
Yeah.
It's exhausting a little bit because you know you go to a few events and you're like going, well, dude, how many more of these I got to do? And so we
and it still has to make money because it has to pay for itself.
That's right.
So,
so
you got to keep it on the rails, and in spite of ourselves, we're doing really good. You know?
That's amazing. So then you know, when did the whiskey discussion come up?
Well, this first talk, it always starts with him because he says, well, let's do some cigars. Okay, let's do some cigars, right? He then calls me one day, I think we were living at that time in California, he says, I think we should get in the whiskey business. I said, well, what in the hell do we know about whiskey except for drinking it? Well, you know somebody. I went, oh, I kind of do. I know Z. So we actually met up with a guy named George Miliotis. He has a place called Wine Bar George at Disney Springs. I've known George for 30-something plus years. And we went to him and said, how do you do this? First of all, he said, I want to be part of this. I think it's a great idea, and so we really didn't know much about it except for going to the store and buying a bottle. So in that process is that you know, you kind of do all your R&D, like, hey, how do you do this? It comes with a bottle. You know, you don't think about an empty bottle and a cork and a label and a capsule and all the other stuff, and then you have to get the TTB to get signed off on, and then you have to do this and whatever. There's a lot to it, and then once you do all that, you got to find a distributor, because as a importer, they call us importers or brand, we can't actually sell it to the retailers. You have to find a distributor. Well, that was kind of...
Not all distributors are created equal.
Well, exactly. But, you know, by good wishes and stuff, we actually end up through George, getting to know the owner of Republic National. And RNDC came in, and it was right when COVID started.
Yeah.
And we presented the bottle to him and told our story. He, within, I don't know, was it 15 minutes, an hour, he says, I want this brand.
Yeah, he said, hey, I've heard enough.
I'm done. Let's get this done in 2 weeks. And he flew down in his plane and whatever it is, and we're like going, okay, what's that mean? And we're all looking at each other, what's the next steps?
Now we have to make whiskey.
Yeah, now we got to do it.
Yep.
And it was just, it's just in these little steps that happened that we really just never anticipated, that just kind of worked out for us. I mean, maybe it's good luck or God's plan or whatever you want to call it. It's like we landed always in the right spot. And so we've done, I'll tell you this, we've never taken advantage of those things, but I would tell you we've initially, during COVID, you know, RNEC wasn't actually doing anything because they were shut down. So I think we told you earlier, there was a story about this guy from Bevfly in Orlando. We said, we can't sit here and we have all these cases of whiskey sitting here in Orlando, and we have to get rid of this stuff. We really didn't have to, we just wanted to. And now it's getting a little fun. And then Norm and I, with another guy, went down to Bevfly and presented to this guy named Bobby, and we said to him, you said to him, he said, what?
Hey, who's skeptical? He goes, look, you know, stuff's not moving really well right now. I'll take a case of it, you know, 6 bottles. And because he was, you know, he didn't want it sitting on a shelf and you know, collecting dust. So I said, I'll tell you what, if you take 5 cases of this stuff, then we will, you know, if you haven't sold it by the end of the month, I'll buy it back at retail price. So you're not going to lose money. You're going to make money. And that was on a Friday. By midday on Saturday, he called up and ordered 50 cases because he had that many orders online for it.
Wow.
And he told us for the next 3 months he made enough money on our bottles to pay his rent. Because no one else is buying any other stuff. So
and I think he sold a couple thousand cases now. Or something
to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing, right? I mean, it almost defies explanation.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, we're blessed.
Yeah, amen.
And
so the first whiskey you came out with, tell us both details of that. So this is an American whiskey.
This actually is. It's actually made up at MGP. What's the MGP mean?
Midwestern Grain Products. So we source it, and really, really proud to source it. Every once in a while, we hear some guy on the internet or something say, "Oh, they source their whiskey," and why wouldn't we? Why would we waste time getting it any other way when I can go to the very best whiskey makers on the planet,
right,
and get it exactly the way I want it, and more importantly, continue to get it in the quantities that I want it, so that I'm going to be able to support global distribution.
Absolutely.
Right? And we kicked it around. We thought about opening a distillery and stuff like that. But the problem is that we will never be able, if we had 100 years, never be able to make whiskey as good as these guys make it, because they've got, collectively hundreds of years of experience, and they've got the resources and the infrastructure supporting them to make it. So it just made sense to us, and I don't see that changing. So they make it the way we tell them what we want. They produce it the way we like it, and then we put it in our bottle. And I'm really proud to partner with MGP. They're great partners.
Yeah. So the first whiskey you came out with is the 12-year.
12-year whiskey,
which is a pretty unique product to come out with right out of the gate.
Well, luckily for us, and it's all, sometimes, like I said, luck or plan, is that we. Okay, so MGP, the plant, used to be the old Seagram's plant up in Indiana, and they produce about 1 million barrels a year. Well, they lost 2,000 barrels that were over 12 years old. And I think we told you earlier is that majority of these barrels were barreled on October 3rd, the same day as Mogadishu.
2007. So,
right.
So many years later, but on the same date.
And so what's funny is how we were just how ironic or how funny or whatever, but it was like, all we did was we went there and tasted a number of whiskeys, and I'll tell you that's harder than you think, because I like to drink everything. But we get up there, and by the age statement, we actually only take it right out of the barrel, and we dilute it down to 92 proof. It comes out about what, 138, 142 or something?
Something like that. But we put it in a bottle where it's drinkable for most people.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so, because the perfect proof would be 86, but we felt 86 was a little light. So we end up all at 92, and I got to tell you, you can compare this to anybody else. There's just nothing. Everybody who drinks this loves our whiskey, and because not only we love it, but it is good stuff. But we get it from MGP, and so they've been a friend of ours for a while now, and so we end up buying about 1,100, 1,200 barrels of just this. Of this 12, now it's what, 18 years, 17 years?
It'll be 18 years this year.
Yeah, it'll be 18 years this October. And so we also bought 8 years, and we bought 5 years, and we have 3 years. So we become more of a commodity deal. We have all these barrels sitting up there at MGP, and so never foresight. We're not in the business. I mean, that we've never been in the whiskey business, but we have whiskey guys that call us and they say, "Hey, how did you know to buy all these barrels and so forth?" Well, we just did.
Right.
But what's your foresight? What did you know about the industry that we don't know? I don't know. We just did it.
Better lucky than good.
That's right.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we started off with this one. We actually came out with, this has been our standard for a while, but we also came out with a 3 wine cast. One is a Caymus Petit Syrah, Honig
right.
Cab, and then what was the Zinfandel?
Yeah, Zinfandel.
Yeah, we have Zinfandel as well. And those were the relationships that George had out in California, and we got their barrels. Well, we got them at a good price. so good you probably would be unbelievable with nothing. And so it was great. You know, I'm all about free. And so so we sent them out from California, sent them over to MGP, and we have them done. Those went off the shelf. I don't think they were lasting, what, 3 or 4 months or 6 months maybe.
And they were awesome. I mean,
Yeah, awesome. So they're
each
gone.
one unique.
We started the same program this year too, but we had a little problem with some of the barrels leaking, so we're going to have that same thing coming out this year. In the meantime, we came out with a 15-year. And the 15-year, you want to take that one?
Yep.
And the 15-year is the same juice that we had. It's been aged up, but we felt that that's so special, and so we actually did that in a 125 proof 15-year. Great drink, might be a little hot for some people, but I'll tell you this, we just felt like we needed to make a difference because it comes right out, barrel strength. We proof it down to 125.
Super smooth.
It's super smooth as well. And you know, when people say, well, how'd you get in this business? So we're like, we just started it. Now, ironically, the same thing is that other guys who are in the military brands and so forth have contacted us. How'd you do this? How you do it? Well, they've been doing it for 15, 20 years.
Right.
But it's been our methodology is that you crawl before you walk. You know, you don't get ahead of yourself. You know, and that's the way we kind of work. Is that, hey, listen, we're still crawling. Now we're actually walking now.
Yeah.
And then get a little bit more. So we started buying before the whole supply chain situation. We started buying bottles, the empty bottles.
Okay.
And so when Republic National came to us and said, how many bottles do you have last November? He said, well, how many can you sell? And I said, well, I'm not a sales guy. You're the sales guy. He said, well, no. Well, how many bottles do you have? How many cases?
How much glass do you have?
Right.
And I told them, well, we have this many cases. And they said, okay, that's our number. Well, I said, oh, crap, I better buy some more bottles. We actually already beat their number this year, probably in the first 3 or 4 months.
Oh, yeah.
And we've already done like 3 cycles of whiskey.
But you had the foresight or the confidence in the product to already buy more glass.
That's right. So I bought enough. We bought enough glass to last another year and a half. And
we surpassed their projections for the year in the first quarter.
That's right. And everything on this bottle, except for the cork, is all made in the U.S. Our intention was we always wanted to buy everything from the United States.
Right.
I mean, cigars is not one. Our boxes on this right here, our labels are made in the U.S., but everything else is made in Nicaragua. And then that bottle right there, except for the cork that comes from Portugal, is made in the United States.
Yeah, that's amazing.
We're always about promoting, you know, our great country.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, so what's next in both lines? I mean, you've got a pretty significant portfolio in cigars. So do you think you're going to keep extending that, or is now focused on distribution, getting more placement, selling through?
Well, the demographic side on cigars is a lot tougher.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different regulations, different distributorships, different everything like that. We really haven't, we're still more in the later crawling stage on the cigars because we need more distributors. You know, and each state has a different process. There's not like an RNDC you can go to.
Right.
You have to go to these smaller groups and so forth and whatever. It's a door-to-door situation. On the whiskey side, we've been very lucky with, how many states now are we in?
I think 34.
34 states in
That's
2 years and 3 months.
Remarkable.
And so, but we have different distributors. We still have Republic National in a lot of states, majority of them. But they use Wine Warehouse out in California. We had Johnson Brothers up in the Midwest, Empire in Tennessee, and we have another one we just got from somewhere. And they have been big proponents of our whiskey. And there needs to be 3 norms because I need Norm to go there, and so forth. And but you know, people just want to get to know Norm. I would tell you an instance, for example. We were at Warner Robins at the Air Force Base here, this is Athens, right?
Macon.
Yeah.
And we were there, and we walked in there, and you know, we supply materials, but we don't give them actual materials. They get it made, right? And we walk in, and they have all our stuff splattered all around this store. And we walk in, like going, "Are we in the right place?" And they said, "Well, here's your tables you can sit behind." We go, "We don't sit behind the table.
Right.
We're in front of the table."
Yeah.
And they go, "Oh, we've never had that before." Because it's really about us all the time. It's about them.
Right.
We want to know the people.
Right.
And so we're always out meeting and greeting people and so forth and talking about our brand and talking about what we do and whatever. So it's all about, again, the community. It's about the group. And so we just, I gotta tell you, at the end of the day, so you asked me about the future of the whiskey. We are going to have another one coming out next year. We have the labels and everything that we're working on. Hopefully it'll launch in October next year. Will be the Gothic Serpent whiskey. It will be a rye and a whiskey.
High
rye.
Yep.
With some corn and with some
it'll be
barley.
Yep. Corn, barley, and rye.
And
I'm a kind of I like the rye component.
Me too. Yeah.
And we'll probably come out with an 8-year-old bottle next year. We need a price point for. Remember, we had to bring the price point. Our price point on this, the 12-year right now is about $70. Our wine cask are $70. The other one's about $120, $125. Each state's different, so it could be a little higher, it could be less. It all depends where it is. Interesting enough, and one thing that was kind of weird was we're now in Hawaii, and they want us to come out to Hawaii to do a thing. And I said, dude, I don't know when we're going to get out to Hawaii, but we could do a Zoom call. And they said, no, we want you out here. So I'm like, okay, well, we got to figure this out. But it's constantly being requests of us doing something. So we do have things coming out in the future.
So you've created a monster, is what you're saying.
Yeah, we actually created a company. We were like going, wow, we actually have an accountant now. We have a lawyer. I was like, wow, we never thought we were going to do this.
Right.
And of course, Z and his company, he is another company he does, is that we're so thankful to have Z on board because he's my family, and we take care of each other. But we want his personal business to do well.
Right.
We like when somebody says, "Oh, you're afraid this company is getting into your space." Well, no, we enjoy them coming in.
Yeah.
Because it's not about us.
Right. It's
just about us getting together and just do things together.
Yeah.
So there's some good people out there.
Yeah, remarkable story. So anything else in the product line that you can think about coming up? I mean, you've already conquered cigars and whiskey. I mean, what's next?
Well,
we have a merchant apparel. So we're working on lifestyle clothing and accessories for cigars and whiskey. And we've been working on it for a while, but because we were so busy with the main products, we haven't had time to really get it off, but now we're starting to focus a little more on that. And I'm super excited about it because everybody likes a good polo shirt or hat. And
exactly,
cool
so it's called Hooten Young Outfitters. And so we were coming with a kind of a neat, I think you saw some of the shirts we have. We're coming with different lines of stuff. We've talked about how do we do it with someone else or together jointly or whatever. It just hasn't come to us yet. I mean, we just, I hate knocking on everybody's doors, but eventually it could happen.
Yep.
But right now we're kind of shooting for it on our own.
Yep.
We've been approached by coffee companies to do a whiskey blend kind of deal. But these things come on, I haven't got approached, I didn't tell you to do this, but a travel company asked me, can we do a Hooten Young travel? So they can build packages of travel using our name, and they would pay us a royalty or a license agreement using our name. So it's just weird. I'm like, what do we?
Things, yeah.
Yeah, out of the blue. So we get quite a few interesting things. We turn down stuff. We're like, well, that's not in our lane. We try to stay.
We try to stay in the lane
right here.
Yeah, because you want to continue doing it well.
Yeah,
exactly.
The things we enjoy doing. Because if you enjoy it and if it's important to you, then you'll do a good job of doing it.
Yeah. So what's the biggest thing you two have learned about this venture? Norm, you've had several chapters of your life, all exciting and all full of life lessons.
Yeah.
So what's the wisdom you want to share with us on?
So this is similar. We've brought this up a couple times in the last couple days, but we've been chatting with you, and that you have a plan, and everything looks cool on paper. And I think one of the guys said it pretty well the other day, a plan is a list of things that are never going to happen when you hit the ground. And so we've had to adjust.
Yeah.
You'll find out when you're friends with somebody, you learn a lot about them. But when you're business partners with them, you learn even more about them. And the good thing is we've managed to keep that friendship going through some pretty challenging, things that go on when you're starting up a business. I mean,
right.
So I think that that's the thing that I like most about it is we've had fun. We've all learned together. We've been stressed out together. We've been challenged together, but we're still just as close or closer than we were when we started, and we're still having fun doing it.
You know, I will tell you this is that we come up with a lot of ideas, but we also we don't know what our next step is, and I'm going to tell you the reason why I say that, because we always find our path, but we don't really have what we want to hear. Our deal is that let's get through it with what we got and continue to push forward. And so things change, you know, economies change, everything changes. But, you know, we talk about great ideas, but our thing is how to maintain the same integrity in items that we work on. Whiskey companies are having a tough time making this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, so far we haven't had a problem.
Yeah.
And I talked to MGP about it. We were really concerned about the whole MGP deal. I mean, we got people calling and say, hey, listen, they're going to run out of whiskey, blah, 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 blah. Well, then I call the head guys at MGP. Listen, I heard this gossip or this news. And they said, you guys don't need to worry about anything.
Okay.
And I said, we're good.
All right.
And so we have other backups. We talked to a couple other distilleries, big ones, and as backups, you know, you always have to have that backup situation. So, you know, there might be some other lines that we come up with that might not be MGP product. I don't know when that will be. It might be in 2 or 3 years. It could be next year. Who knows? I don't see it next year, but you know, and we're also on the cigar side. We're looking to do some product in the Dominican Republic. You know, we never know what's going to happen in Nicaragua, so hey, let's kind of be diverse a little bit and go Dominican. And so Z's working on that as well. So, you know, there's just things like that anybody looks at risk adverse, you know, hey, how do I kind of move it around a little bit? Yeah. So, yeah, so far it's been good.
Well, I love it. As I shared, you know, this magazine's kind of a passion project of ours, and, you know, we're kind of letting it evolve naturally as well. You know, just, you know, reaching out and kind of seeing, you know, who seems interested and talking to them and seeing if they share kind of, you know, our values and, you know, kind of, you know, to become an extended part of our family. Because as I said before, I love the American dream and the people that are, you know, brave enough and work hard enough to pursue it. You know, it's what, you know, one of the things that makes this country the greatest country on earth.
Agree.
Is, you know, everybody's freedom to be able to pursue whatever their passion is. Yeah,
I think you still got to believe in each other. So you find that group of people that you identify with, and you stay loyal to them. You believe in them, and you know, when you take the Pledge of Allegiance in the morning, you're really pledging allegiance to each other. You're not pledging allegiance to a cloth, right? And so, and then keep the faith and continue to do your duty as a citizen and vote. You know, it may be to the point now where you can't sit back and not be passively engaged anymore. You maybe have to come actively involved in the process of being American through political activism or voting or however that is. But you might not be at the time anymore where you can sit back and expect things to carry on without participating in it. Yeah. And so that's what I preach to my kids, and don't be passive, be involved in the process, because you can't complain about how it goes if you didn't at least stand up and get involved and fight on every level to keep it.
You know, first of all, you mentioned faith. I mean, basically that's what we're all premises. We are all about. Mm-hmm. But then also is I told my kids, don't be a trend follower, be a trendsetter. You need to set your path in the right direction. As parents, we have an obligation to make sure that we have guided our children, have moved them in the right direction. And so, you know, when people ask me about our children, right, and we talk about it, what did you do different than we're doing? I said, I don't know what you did, but I can tell you what we did. Right. I can tell you we had one TV in our house. And they said, one TV? I said, absolutely. If we couldn't do it together, we didn't watch it. But we read a lot. And so you instill values in your children at a young age. At some point, you see it when they go to college or whatever they do and say they want to be a plumber. Dude, I'll tell you this, plumbers make a lot of money. Electricians make a lot of money. Right. They didn't have to go to college to do that. but they're doing something. They're moving forward. I think there was an example, I think you were talking about the other day, about some guy doing one shop and had one truck, and how now he has multiple trucks and multiple offices.
Yeah.
That's the American dream.
Amen.
And so what we have to do is progressively, don't sit on the sidelines. We got to be aggressive. I want to say we have to be erratic, but we got to be aggressive in making sure that we keep our standard of living and what we all truly believe in. And I think a lot of people sit on the sidelines say, just let it happen. We can't do that anymore. We got to be a little bit more proactive in the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I love it, guys. We could go on talking forever. I mean, we probably shouldn't for the sake of camera batteries and whatnot. Yeah. But I do sincerely. I'm humbled and grateful. For the honor of getting to know you and spend time with you. You guys being so generous with your time to have us down here to talk to you.
Well, thanks for coming out.
We are huge fans and advocates and champions of your brand and everything that you're doing. And as I said, you're now part of the family, and everything that we can do to help you guys out. It's just part of our business now. Because you're part of the family.
And likewise, the honor and the privilege was ours, and you came a long way from California down here to South Georgia to do this, and hopefully you enjoyed it, because we sure enjoyed having both of you.
Yeah,
and feel like
hope it's the first of many.